Hello, everybody. Time for another Inkarnate live stream. Today, we're doing perspective. Yes. Yeah, perspective is awesome, and I'm really excited for this one. So, this is going to be really fun. We're going to let people filter in. I'm going to do just a couple announcements. Just a reminder today, we're going to be doing how to create perspective. Super exciting. We'll be covering both the fantasy, regional, and world parchment styles. In other words, knowing how to create perspective in that style as well as perspective in the Battlemap styles. So I'll have some maps for you to clone and to edit, and then you can follow along in the stream. Also, don't forget, tomorrow is how to create map frames. Yeah, really excited about that one too. Map frames are beautiful. Make your maps pop and stand out. And that's really, really, really nice. So excited about that. Also, I just want to let everyone know that next week, that I'm going to be celebrating my birthday with family, so I will be gone all next week, so no live streams, but I will be sure to put down videos on YouTube so that people have stuff to watch on those days anyway. Hey, Becca, the Musical Rogue, thank you so much. Glad that you're here. Awesome. Yay, more people. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm getting old. I love it. Who doesn't like getting old, right? All right, so again, we're going to be doing perspective. All right, well, let's not waste any time. Let's go ahead and get started for now. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and put some links in the chat, and I'm going to give you some maps that you can clone to follow along. So this first one is right here. I'll go ahead and copy the link and put that in here. Hey, Nemrod, glad that you're here. So I went ahead and put a map link in the chat, so go ahead and clone and edit that map if you want to follow along. That's great, so I'll go ahead and do that. So we're going to go and open it up. I'll edit the map and we'll get started. I'll give you a few moments to clone and edit for those of you who are following along. We'll open up the map. Again, we're doing perspective. Sweet. Okay. All right, let's just zoom out a little bit and just take a look. I'm just going to break down a little bit about this before we get started. As you can see, the overall layout is kind of showing some perspective as the back part gets smaller and smaller as it goes farther away. So one of the things you have to learn about perspective is something called a vanishing point. So with perspective, the further things are away from you, that's the point, the vanishing point. The further they go away from you, the smaller they're going to get. The things that are closest to you are clearly going to get bigger. This is easily demonstrable by just putting your hand to your face and then taking it far away from your face, and you'll notice that it's getting bigger and smaller. No brainer, right? So perspective is not as complex as you think. It's a little bit easier. So go ahead and download this. I'm also going to show you a little bit about the guide. So you'll notice that at the top there says horizon there. Your horizon is basically where you're going to put no more stamps. It will go ahead and vanish. Because the planet is round, when you look at the horizon, you don't see anything else in the far, far distance past the vanishing point, except for maybe sun, moon, stars, obviously whatever's in the sky. But when it comes to the land, because it's curved, you can't see. So there is this vanishing point or horizon. That vanishing point is going to be where horizon is. So you won't put any more stamps there unless it's stars, moon, whatever it is you want to be there. Your vantage point, that's basically where you are looking out at the horizon. That's the point where you're starting. So I hope that kind of makes sense there. Let's go ahead and break down the 1, 2, 3 bit. So I went ahead and created 3 sections. So whenever I say like section 1, 2, 3, you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll see the 1, 2, 3 here. So section 1, section 2, section 3. I've sectioned them off on purpose because it's nice to work on one section at a time instead of trying to do the whole thing, because it can be confusing when you're trying to figure out, well, what scale should stamps in section 1 be? What stamps size should they be in section 3 or closer to the horizon? So this little guide is going to help you with that, okay? All right, so one of the first things I like to do when you're making a perspective map like this with the world or regional style is to put down 2 stamps. The first one is going to be pretty much mountains for me, because your mountains generally are the largest stamp that you're likely going to put on any of your maps. That includes top down, whatever. It's probably going to be the largest. Okay, so using the mountains is a good guide, a good start. So we'll go to Fantasy Regional. I'm going to go ahead and pick mountains. I'm going to put down 2 stamps. I'm going to put down 1 stamp in section 1 and section 3. And this is going to work as my guide. So if I make the mountains, let's go ahead and pick a size that I want. We'll make it pretty big like this, okay? So this is the general scale that I'll be working with closest to the vantage point. And then maybe I'll drop the size down like this to kind of show what is the difference between section 1 and section 3. So now I have a guide, 2 points, the vantage point to the horizon, and now I know what the sizes will be in between because I have the smallest and the largest stamp. Okay, now when it comes to scale with sizes though, you might select a mountain and say, well, it's at 150, okay? But let's say that you decide you want to put down a hill or a tree or another stamp like, let's see here, let's put down a building perhaps. So put down a building, you'll notice that the building is quite large. So scale will change, okay? Because mountains are so freaking large, so huge, that to actually scale them to the proper size, they'd be bigger than this whole canvas, right? So of course, you'll have to scale down stamps in section 1 to match up with the mountain size. That's just the limitations of the tool, and of course, just that's the way scale is. Clearly, your building is not going to be this big. It's almost the size of the mountain, right? So when it comes to structures, which we won't get to yet, you'll probably have to shrink them down in size, of course. That's just the way it is, okay? Also, there are guides on my profile. Go check that out. I believe Cheryl will go ahead and provide the link to my profile. I have guides for perspective, both in this style and in top-down. So go check those out if you want a quick image reference to work with, okay? All right, so we have our 2 stamps right here to kind of help with understanding the sizes that I'm going to be working with in between 1 and 3. And a great thing to use is maybe showing a mountain range, and a mountain range is great. So we'll have the mountain range maybe curving outward, upward, as it gets smaller in size, as it goes further and further away from the vantage point and closer to the horizon. So we'll start there. Let's go ahead and make a mountain chain. We even did, I think the last stream we did was how to make mountain ranges. So, oh, wait, new first time chat. Hey, hello, I'm sorry for the probably dumb question. Is perspective applied to fantasy world maps, or should it all be plain? That's a great question, and no, it's not a dumb question. There are no dumb questions here on our streams, okay? No dumb questions. Okay, so when it comes to perspective with your world maps, that's just up to you if you want to have perspective in them, okay? That's a lot of extra work for your world maps, so I would only add in perspective unless you want to have it in your map. But if you go through the Explore page and other people's profiles on our site, you'll notice that a lot of people don't use perspective on their world map. So it's really personal preference. I'm just showing perspective because sometimes some people want to add a little bit of perspective to make their mops. Hey, everybody, you working on your mops today? I'm working on my mops. Yeah, this is the new mop that I'm working on. Little brain slip there. But hey, it's up to you, okay? I only recommend adding perspective because it's going to make your map pop out from the other maps. And I know that some of you here might be private contractors and you get your daily bread from trying to sell your maps to the community, right? So this is one way to make your maps pop out from other users because not everyone uses perspective, and that's okay, right? Because it is extra work to do perspective. You have to focus on scale and all the different sizes. But of course, that little extra time to make your map a little bit different from others makes it pop out. People are going to view it, they're going to look at it, and they're going to go, wow. Okay, so adding perspective is something that you can add in there as a style choice. But with most world maps, just knowing how projections are on world maps, there's mostly not a varying scale or perspective on your world maps. You'll generally have the projection be all the exact same size. There's not changing scale unless you want to do that. I hope that answered that question. A little long-winded answer there, but I hope it helped. And feel free to ask any other questions that you might have, okay? Don't be shy, or you can ask the mods. Okay, all right. Okay, so now that you've done that, we can go in and start placing different mountains, okay? Now, as you go into each section, you'll have to decrease the size a little bit, and you'll also have to focus on the layer that each stamp is on. So this stamp that's currently selected right here, it's on layer 1, okay? Now you're probably going to want all your mountains to be on that same layer so that when you place them on the map, the perspective or it will make sure that the mountains are in front and behind each other. So I'll go ahead and place another one right here, like this. Now, once I go into section 2, I might want to consider bringing the size down a little bit. So these ones right here were at 150. So I can go in and you can hold down your shift key and your mouse scroll wheel and bring it down. So let's just say bring it down to 110. So that's a 40% decrease, or 40 points decrease there. So let's go ahead and place another one. And now remember what we learned in the last stream about mountain ranges, is that your mountain ranges are going to be a little curved. So I'll go ahead and show you a guideline that we're going to use for it. And this applies for everyone when you're making mountain ranges with or without perspective, okay? And I'll make sure to go ahead and put the link to that mountain guide later in a card when we add this to YouTube. So I'm going to go ahead and create a line like this, and this is going to represent the mountain ranges. So now you have this nice guide here. I'm going to follow that line. That creates that line represents the peak of each mountain that the range is going to be following along, okay? Let's go ahead and zoom in, click the mountain again. And let's do a little bit, oopsie, 110. That seems a bit big, so I'm going to bring it down. So the trick to making sure that you get the mountain, to get the scale right, is to make sure that each time you bring the size down, the next mountain, the closer and closer that you get to the small stamp by the horizon, make sure that it's noticeably different. Hey, yay, awesome, Jody! Dun, 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 dun. Drum roll, please. Yay, another master has arrived. I sense their chi, their power. Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going. So we're going to keep adding in these mountains here, bringing them smaller. There we go. Okay, let's bring the size down again, even smaller. Smaller still. Yeah, I love it. So many wonderful people here. I like it so much. So much. Yes. All right, so now we've gone down in scale, and let's also bring this one down in the back a little bit smaller, okay? There we go. All right, so now if you look carefully, you'll see that the mountains are large, and the further back you go, the smaller they get. So not complex, super easy, right? All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and delete that guideline there. I don't need that anymore. Now, just like we talked about in that last mountain stream, you're gonna want to add on some branching mountains, some branching ranges, okay? And I'll show you how I go about doing that as well. So not hard to figure out, pretty easy stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and use the path tool. I'm gonna make some points and I'll show you how I go about how to determine where your branches of your mountain ranges are gonna be. So this white line right here, now each angle, each time that it turns, each point, that contact right there is where your branch is going to be. Hey, first time chat, MFG Game Time. Thank you for these tutorials and videos and the amazing product. Hey, thank you for joining us and for being here today. Feel free to ask any questions that you have, okay? Don't be shy. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and use a different color just to represent something different so you can see it. So at this point right here, you'll see that I can put a branch. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the segment and go with free draw instead. It's a bit easier that way. So at this point right there, that's where a branch would be. We put another one right here, another branch right there, another branch right there, okay? So for every spot that there's a connector, you'll see that is where you're probably gonna want to put, oopsie, that, I don't know why I gave you a D for, these points. Now you don't have to follow this logic, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but it works for me. There are other methods too. Of course, like sometimes there'll be parts of the mountains that are popping out, like right here. So that's a nice one to put one there. You can put another one here, like that if you want, up to you, okay? But these are just some tips and tricks to help you with your mountain ranges. Sometimes it's hard to say, well, where do I add, this small branch? Where do I do all this stuff? Okay, so we'll help you through that process. Now I'm gonna go ahead and delete these circle parts. I'm gonna keep the yellow paths because I'm gonna use them as a guide. Now, and what's really nice is you can go ahead and select a mountain where the branch is, and then that mountain will be selected, and then you can go ahead and just scale it down properly. So I'll go ahead and make this one here. That looks a little big. Let's go with something a little bit smaller, perhaps. So let's do that instead. 1 second here. Let's go ahead and zoom in. Let's see here. Oh, I think that should work fine. And don't be afraid to rotate your stamps. Sometimes it's really fun to rotate your stamps. And I'll also show you a neat trick to make your mountain ranges stand out from other mountain ranges that you might see. I'll show you a couple tricks. We learned this in the last stream, but I want to apply them here. Transform tool, select all the mountains, change the height, and you can really get some really nice tall peaks. Now there's a little more to it than that. You can go in and just select random stamps like this and just kind of rotate them just a little bit. So I'll go ahead and rotate this one. Let's go ahead and rotate this one this way. Let's go ahead and rotate this one this way. And this way you kind of, your ridge where the top peaks are not all perfectly lined up like a straight line. And that looks a little odd, right? So that's something that you can do to kind of help yourself out, is use that transform tool to increase the height, to give those peaks some real height, as you would expect, right? Mountains are tall, they're not low to the ground, they're very high up, as you would expect, right? So high up that they kind of create their own atmosphere, right? All right, let's keep going. So now that I've made those larger ones, I can go in and use the branches and just turn the height back to normal. And that way my branches will be at the normal height for transform, while the central range will be higher up, right? So that helps us out there. So I'll go ahead and just create some smaller ones like this, kind of branching out. And remember, the smaller, as your mountains branch off away from the main range, decrease the size. They're going to get smaller, right, as you go. So if you look carefully, this stamp right here, you'll notice that it's slightly bigger. And then the further I went away, the smaller that it gets. So very helpful. Hey, first time chat. Welcome, Joss195. Glad that you're here. Dragon Dreams and Squirrels. I'm still teaching the great Jeremy stuff? I don't believe it. You jest, sir. I think you jest. Let's keep going, all right? So let's go ahead and add in the next mountain to our range. Decrease that size. Remember to get that nice and small. And remember, the closer you get, the bigger they're going to get. So we'll go ahead and continue with that. Let's put another larger one right here. And let's put a smaller one right here, perhaps. One more. Let's put a smaller one down. Not the same one. I'm trying to avoid using the similar stamps. So let's not do that. Let's go one right here like this. Okay. So as you can see, we'll go ahead and zoom out and take a look. So far, so good. Let's go ahead and delete all those paths. So I'll just go ahead and just turn everything off. Path, select all. Only paths are selected. Delete, gone. Okay. Make sure I go back to select all, so that way I can select things. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Glad I made it. Really need help with regional fantasy maps. Hey, I'm glad that you're here, Siri Myth Killer. Glad that you are here. Awesome. All right. So let's keep going. I'm loving all the first time chatters. It's just awesome. Hey, Wandano 41. Good morning. Didn't realize there was a stream. Is there a June calendar out somewhere? Thanks. Absolutely. You can go to my profile. Cheryl can provide the link to, just right to the map link, actually, to the calendar. She'll go ahead and put that in the chat. So go ahead and check that out. Super excited about that. Just for those of you newcomers, just to let you know, next week, no streams because I will be on my birthday vacation for the whole week. But don't worry, I've got videos already lined up and queued up to play while I'm gone. So I will miss all of you. A week without you guys, I don't know if I can handle it. I don't think I can do it. But I will. I'll survive, I swear. I promise. Okay, let's keep going. Let's talk about this. All right. Enjoy your birthday and the break. Thank you, MFG Game Time. Love it. All right. So we've added in those ranges and stuff like that. I'm just going to rotate a couple, move things around. And of course, after you add your mountain ranges, it only makes sense to create your foothills. Majority of mountains at their base have some foothills. So of course, go into that catalog. And when it comes to, when you put down your mountains, make sure that it's around the same color. Okay. And so what we're going to do is create a secondary line. And I'll show you this real quick. So our foothills are going to be about right here. They're going to be at the base going all along like this. This is where your foothills are going to be. And of course, on the other side, right here and right here. This is where your foothills are going to be. That's your foothill zone, okay? Just like the mountains, the hills will be larger, closer to the range, and they're going to decrease in scale the further they go away from it, okay? And also don't forget to scale down the further you go away. So it's a little bit of double work. But now that you've added that mountain range as your scale guide, now it should be easier to just pick a stamp, scale it to the right size, and then place it down. That's why we put down those mountains first, right? That's our guide, right? On most maps, the largest thing on your map is always going to be your mountains. Mountains are massive, okay? They're just huge, right? So let's go ahead, and I'm going to delete those paths. I just wanted to show you the zone in which you will find those. So I'll go ahead and delete those. Those are gone. We're going to go back into mountains here. I'm sorry, hills. And I'm going to go ahead and make them relatively small. This is a small one. Put one here. And when it comes to placing these, it can be complex. One thing that's really nice to do is you can put your hills nice and snug right into the mountain, okay? This will give it a little bit more flavor. So watch what happens. I'll go ahead and increase the size and just put that hill right up against the mountain. Boom, right up against the mountain. Don't be shy, just throw them on there. Do it, do it. So go ahead and just put them right there at the base. It's okay if they come into contact with your mountain ranges. That's actually kind of nice. It's nice to throw a mountain range just boom, right on, or hills right on top. Gives it some extra character. It looks nice. It just works perfect. Ah, thank you, Nimrod. I appreciate it. You are too kind. So don't be shy. Just throw those mountains right there into your, on top of your, right at the edge of your mountains. Don't be shy. Throw them in there. Okay, let's keep going. Let's throw another one right here. Those are kind of a large hill. That's a massive hill. Ooh. This is the biggest hill I've ever seen. There we go. We'll throw it down. There we go. Much better. Okay. We'll just keep adding more and more hills. Put one in the background here, one here. And of course, now once you put some up against the edges, now you can go in and put your smaller hills. Now what I like to often do is to turn off the random stamp and just select this single hill right here, number 5, in the brown hills, number 5, okay? How are you putting the hills under the mountains without putting them on a different layer? Well, okay, so certain map styles, the collision box work differently. With the regional styles, if everything is on layer 1, then if you put a mountain here, let's just go ahead and show it to you real quick. Let's just do this. Okay, so I'll put a mountain right here, right? Now I got a hill. Okay, now the hill's on the exact same layer. Okay, now watch what happens when I move this. So you see how it's behind it? Now when I move it forward, it'll be in front of it. Okay? So this particular map style, the regional and the world styles, they have this kind of collision box. So if you place it further up above the stamp, it will go behind it. If you place it in front of the stamp, it will be in front of it, so bottom, okay? That's just the way the that the collision boxes in this style works. That's why I recommend that when it comes to your land features like mountains and hills, always put them on the same layer in that style, so that way they will properly go in the front and into the back. So it's all about the collision style, okay? Super, super, super helpful. Hey, I'm glad I was able to clarify that, right? Perfect. So again, what I like to do is go in with those stamps, remove the random stamp, and just pick that one single hill. This is really useful because now you can kind of create some smaller hills next to the cluster of other hills. So when I'm doing my hills, I like to put a lot of the larger hills closer together, and then I can sprinkle or put down just some small individual hills just to kind of create more transition between going from the mountain range off into the flatter area. So it might be a plain, it might be a valley in which there'll be another mountain range on the other side. But putting in these smaller hills is really, really helpful. So start with just putting down a couple, and of course, adjust the scale as you get closer, of course. And these individual hills are really helpful just to give a little bit more character and easier transition. So now once you've added in just some of these smaller ones like that, now you can go in and make some even smaller ones. So nice, small, tiny, and just kind of throw them around like this, here and there, and we'll put in a smaller one here, here, here. Oops, I don't like the way that works. Let's push this behind it, much better. Don't forget to do the overlapping. Put some mountain ranges right behind, or some hills right behind, right? So, because that is the trick to depth. If you want to create more depth, overlap, 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 overlap. I cannot explain to you how much overlapping is so ridiculously important to depth. Okay, absolutely do that. So I'll continue adding a couple more small hills in here. There we go, sweet. Don't forget to clone and edit the guide that I made for this on my profile, or go ahead and check out the link that I provided at the beginning of the stream. Just go to the top and you will notice that there is one map to clone, and you can go ahead and follow along, okay? All right, let's go ahead and add the last bits. One more right here, there we go. Okay, now if we take a step back and take a look at what we've got, sweet. So we have a nice mountain range with some real nice foothills on the side, of course, so that looks just fine. And it got this nice arch here, so that looks really nice. I'm enjoying that so far. Let's go ahead and save at 132 changes. Of course, when you have a super number of changes like this, you're probably going to want to save your map, okay? All right, so we'll go ahead and save, and then we'll keep going. Thank you, everybody. I am just so excited for this month's streams. We've got some really, really great ones coming up. Map frames tomorrow. Good versus evil battle map. We're going to continue on points of interest. We're going to talk about how to make your own map style so that you know how to make maps that pop out, that make you look a little bit different, and are really going to catch users' eyes, right? We're also going to continue on our city blocks. We're going to do how to create guilds and shops with fantasy battle maps. We're going to be creating a crossroad. And of course, as you should always have, is how to create a starting village. And that includes, you know, where to put NPCs, what to have your NPCs say, how to put your shops. And that's all going to be in the fantasy regional style. So, woot woot, because you're starting villages, and not all of your villages have to be top down where your players are walking around. There's tons of theater of mind, and if you don't like theater of mind, that's okay too. You can provide visuals, and so that's what this is kind of for. All right, did I just 3K? Oh, that is so that 3K right there represents the resolution speed, the resolution that I'm working in. So this is in 3K. It'll tell the number of saves will be right here. Watch what happens when I put down a stamp real quick. So I'll put down a stamp, and then you'll notice that it says one change. 3K just means the editing resolution. It's a 3-carat diamond. Okay. All right, so now that's done, we're probably going to want to blend it in, right? Whenever I put down stamps, I like to blend it in. So now most mountains have like a built-in texture that works with it. I think this one right here, let me just check the title, Grass Brown, is meant to work with these mountains. So that works just fine. And I always recommend using the edgy brush. The edgy brush is absolutely beautiful. It works absolute wonders. It's fantastic. And the reason why I like using the edgy brush, because it works in these individual cells. And when you do your multiple layers of strokes on top, it really looks nice. So let me first just do this. You grab a relatively larger size, and right underneath the mountain, apply one stroke. Okay, just wherever there's a stamp, just put a little bit of this texture underneath. Okay, this is going to be your base. We're just going to call this your base coat. We're painters today, okay? This is going to be your first coat, your primer, shall we say. All right, your first coat. So we'll go ahead and put this first coat down. Okay. Remember, cover every single place that you see a stamp touching the ground. Apply that texture. Now, don't let go, okay? Don't let go. And the reason why I recommend that is because, remember, we're dropping the opacity down. There's a bit of a caveat when using, the edgy brush. There's not a softness feature around the edge like there is with the circle brush. The edgy brush works in cells, and so the edges are going to be hard. So when I apply 100% like this, you'll notice that it's 100%, right? Now, what happens if I apply another one on top of here, you'll notice that it increases the amount. So every time I do another stroke, it's going to increase the opacity, the opaqueness of that texture on the thing. So what I'll do now is go in with our second coat, okay? And it can be single clicks if you want, because the texture, where it's gonna be the most opaque at 100% is gonna be at the base of the mountains. That's where you're gonna find it the most. Okay, so I'll go with 35%. I think that's a good start. And I'm just gonna start from the back like this and just single click like this and just single click wherever, and just keep doing these single clicks and do them at the base of the mountains, okay? Because what we're doing right now is blending in your stamps with your base texture. So you're just gonna do these single clicks and you'll notice that the blending is starting to happen. Now, if you don't wanna do single clicks, you don't have to do that. You can just go in like this and go like that. I just add in the single clicks because it adds a little bit of character. Okay, so we'll go ahead and make sure that this texture is most visible underneath, in contact between the base of the stamps and the ground. I know I'm being a broken record and repeating myself, but I have to get it into your skulls because I forget things so much. All right, we'll do these single clicks. Keep going, keep going. All right. Okay, now from there, what I like to do is to go in and just do single clicks where you'll see there's a line right here. Look carefully and I'll show it to you. You'll see there's this weird kind of line right here. Like there's no transition between this strange line right here. That looks weird, right? You don't want to have things like that. You want to make sure that there is some single dots to break that up. So we go over to this edge right here. We'll pick that smaller size. Oopsie. Wrong tool, and just along the edge, just single click, just a couple, and all you're doing is just breaking up that line. That's it. Okay, so breaking up that line by just doing some single clicks. There we go. Oh yeah, that looks good. Looks good. Let's take a step back. Did I miss any spots? Yeah, right here. Just those single clicks really help to break that up. Okay, let's take a look. 382 changes, I mean 3,000 changes. We better save, right? Now, whenever you're doing texturing, of course, you're going to be doing like 1,000 strokes or whatever. So, hey, don't worry about saving after that. It's just, don't worry if you get to 100 changes when you're doing your blending because, hey, you're probably going to hit 100 changes within a matter of seconds or moments when you're doing that single click, because that's a lot of single clicks, right? Those are going to add up. So don't worry about saving until you're finished all those single clicks. And that way you don't have to be like, oh my gosh, I'm saving every 100 changes when I'm making 1,000 changes per minute, okay? That doesn't work out. You're going to go insane. You're going to pull your hair out. You're probably going to be like, ah! So just remember that, hey, it's okay if you go over 1,000 changes, especially when it comes to blending, because believe me, blending is time consuming, I can assure you. It's a lot of work, but hey, the results are magnifique, right? All right, so we're gonna let this save. We're gonna move on to the next step. I also wanted to show you some cool things as well when it comes to, with mountains. I already showed you this in the last stream with mountain ranges, but I love this technique so much that I wanna share it with you. If you go into objects and type mountains, there's a couple techniques that I can show you on how to make your mountains pop out. There's a couple techniques. So let's go to Object Shadow. Okay, I'm gonna open that up. Now you'll notice right now there's a dark shadow. Okay, now that dark shadow is helpful. It kind of makes the mountain pop out a little bit more, right? You kind of notice that. Let me turn it off and you can see what I mean. Watch what happens when I turn it off. You notice how the black outline is kind of gone? Okay, so we'll go back. I'm going to go to Object. Now, if you want your mountains to pop out more, you can use this technique to make your mountains pop out more. Focus on, notice where the light source is on your mountains. Notice that the light is on the left side, and on the right side is the shadow of the mountain. Okay? Well, all right. Well, why don't we move the shadow a little bit to the right? Okay? And the reason why we're doing that is because, hey, that's where the shadow of the mountain is, right? So we'll drop down a little bit of that shadow size, and you'll notice now that the mountains pop out even more, right? So that's one technique you can do. There's a couple other things to do. What happens if you want to add some mountain clouds, okay? We can switch that shadow to white. So I'll go ahead and switch this to white, bring the scale up quite a bit of the blur, so it's large, and then just boost it up. So I'll push it up like this, give it a moment here. Let's go up even more, there we go. And let's bring the size down. So if you want a little bit of weather, if you want a little bit of weather in your map, a little bit of weather on your mountains, you can totally do that by just go ahead and using the stamp object shadows to create these effects. So again, you can create the shadow of the mountains by changing it to a darker color and moving it to whichever direction you want, or you can change the shadow to white to make it look like it's clouds, because remember, mountains are so large, they create their own weather, right? They're so large. So you would expect a lot of clouds over your mountains. That's pretty normal, okay? Now, we don't have to do this if you don't want to. It's just something that I wanted to mention. I'll go ahead and select these again and just turn off the shadow. It's not required, but I wanted to show you a cool little trick there, okay? All right. Now, the next step is to also create other land formations. One thing that I did in the little guide that I made was I added a river. And adding in a river also helps to force more of the perspective. Okay, so if I make a river, then the river, as it gets closer to the vantage point, that's below, you can see it there, vantage point, it's going to get wider. Now, the further it goes back towards the horizon, the river is obviously going to get smaller. Okay. Now, I'm not going to use a texture to do this, because then back and forth I'll have to retexture every time I make a mistake. So instead, I'm going to use the path tool to make a river. So let's go ahead and put down a path real quick, like this. I'm going to go with the full width. I'm going to turn off that shadow. And I do believe if you use the blend mode hue, when you put two paths on top of each other, like this, you'll notice that the overlap is not there. Okay, so watch what happens when I take and put this back to the other normal blend mode. Okay, you're going to notice that there is, especially if I drop the opacity down, you'll notice that there is a difference. You can see the little diamonds right here. I'll go ahead and put a little path here so you can kind of see it. Right here, you can see right there that there are diamonds, right? So that you can stop that overlap by simply just using a different blend mode. Hue is the way to go, okay? So I'll go ahead and select these again, and I'll switch the blend mode to hue, and that won't happen. I'm gonna make sure it's at full opacity as well. There we go. Okay, now we can start on our river. Now you can start at the back and move forward to the front, and you can just use a single small line for now, okay? So let's go ahead and make that river. Now remember, rivers meander, so there's an S curve. Now we did a tutorial on that last week on how to make rivers. Go check that out. There's guides on my profile on that as well. Meandering is basically these S curves that are created by an erosion of a bank. As a bank erodes on one side, the current is redirected to the eroded side of the bank, and it slows down the current on the other side of the river, and that allows the current to slow down, and then sediment builds up. And that's what causes those S curves in your rivers. It's due to erosion on one side of the bank, and then it redirects the current. It weakens the current on the other side, and sediment builds up because it isn't being thrown or being carried down the river, because on that side of the bank, it's just the current is not strong enough to carry that sediment further down, okay? So for now, just worry about let's just worry about one size. Oopsie, I just realized I've got to go back to my blue here. What am I doing? Make sure set to hue. Okay, let me just check the size. Oh, that looks fine. Okay, so we're going to create these S curves. All right, there we go. All right, now right now it's all the same size as you can see, but we can fix that, right? Remember, it's set to U, so if I put a path on top of a path, it will not overlap in a bad way. So I'll go ahead and increase the size. So let's go ahead and start by just adding a little bit more and making this fairly wide. There we go. big mouth. There we go. I'm just going to keep adding more and more paths, and what I'm doing is just making it smaller and smaller the further and further that we get away, okay? It's a little bit of work because there's no way to adjust the size, unfortunately, as you're applying it, so you'll just have to start with a small ribbon first and then just keep applying. Now, if you look carefully, you'll notice that, again, the closer I get, the wider the mouth, the width of the river gets larger, right? So it makes total sense, and it's going to get smaller the further back you go. So let's keep adding in a little bit more, and then I can probably stop adding it once I reach section 3, that last section. There we go. Okay, so now you have a nice river following along, and of course, rivers headwaters start in the mountains, so it might be helpful to throw down a couple paths leading from the mountains, kind of going to here like that. Let's decrease that size. It doesn't need to be that thick, a little bit smaller. There we go. Now, every single time a river connects, the headwaters from the mountains connect into another river, it's going to give it more flow, more current, stronger current, and so of course the river is going to get wider, right? Because more water sources, more force is being applied to it, okay? Let's add another one in right here. Don't forget to add a little bit of S-curve and throw that in like that. Let's throw in another one right here. Let's make it a little bit bigger this time. There we go. Right into here like this, and I'll increase the size just a bit more. There we go. And let's push it down a layer. I don't want it to be in front of that. Okay. All right. So now we have our little headwaters rushing in to connect to this main river right here. All right. And you do see the difference. You see that the river is much smaller. Its width is much smaller towards the horizon, and it gets larger the closer you get to the vantage point. So not complex, pretty easy stuff. I'm just going to do a real quick save, 28 changes, might as well. When you have 3,028 changes, you need to save. I'm just going to tease you, Nemrod. Okay. Oh, yeah, mad respect to that dragon that Jeremy made. Magic. I love that piece so much. All right, we're going to save. I got some elite play. I got some elite incarnators here. Dang, I love it. They can call me out now. Maddie, that's not how you do that. Psh, do that right. Put me in line, okay? All right, okay. Let's keep going, all right? We're almost there. We're going to go ahead and another 15 minutes. We're going to throw in some fun stuff in that negative space right there. And then we'll go ahead and move on to battle maps. And I'll make sure to provide the next template to follow along for that as well in the chat when we get there, okay? So let's go ahead and keep going. Next step, let's go ahead and throw in some cliffs. And cliffs are really fun to work with. They're time consuming until we get a room tool added. For now, it will be just a tad time consuming, just for the time being. All right, so let's go ahead and add that in there. Let's go ahead and throw in some cliffs. 1 second, I'll look for the one I'm looking for here. The reason why I love these S-curves too, besides being real, is that they're excellent for throwing in your cliffs as well. So see how this cliff just fits in real nicely into that bend right there? Super nice, right? And you can keep throwing in more cliffs, and I'm going to line them just along the river, okay? And make sure that I don't, a little bit of operation here. Don't make sure the cliff doesn't touch the edge there. It's a bit of a tall cliff, so I'll go ahead and bring it down, scale it down one size. I think that should be much better. There we go. And we're just going to create maybe a little bit of plateaus or something like this that your players can kind of walk on right here. Let's put in another one. Maybe, where's that same one only facing the other way? Right there, perfect. We'll throw this one in like that. There we go. See how that just fits right nicely into those bends, right? Just fits there so nicely. You can do the same thing on the other side, right? Put another one right there. They just work so nicely along those bends. Okay. All right, I think just that looks fine. Let's add in one more right here, I think, and then maybe we'll throw in some plateau rocks, some elevation over here. Now, technically, by definition, These cliffs would probably be on the left side of the river because that's where your elevation change is happening. As the mountains are going up in elevation, your cliffs are probably going to be on the left side of the river and probably not the right side. It doesn't mean that it can't. It can, but most of your cliffs are probably going to be found in where the elevation change begins, which is the left side or west side of the river or the east side of the mountain range. Okay, it's not a dogma, but it does make a little bit more sense. It doesn't mean that you can't have cliffs on the other side. You totally can. I mean, you could have a series of canyons in here if you wanted to. That's perfectly fine. But for those of you who are like, I don't know when to put cliffs, best time to do it is clearly going to be with putting them at the base of your mountains. Generally the best place to put them, at least in my opinion. Okay, let's go ahead and put that one there. Cool, put another one right there. That looks good. That looks good. Let's also put in some plateau rocks. I showed you guys how to make these in a stream in the past. I think the last stream we did, Mountain Ranges, I showed you how to make them. I'm going to add them here as well because I just love them so much. So I'll go ahead and create my own little plateau rocks. Oopsie, I just accidentally, oopsie, what am I doing? What is going on here? There we go. Okay. Yeah, oh yeah, I hope, Memrod, that you will get the time to make a perspective style map. Yeah, super awesome stuff. Adding in a horizon, adding in the horizon just gives your map, just makes it different from the other maps. So again, when it comes to like map projections, like your world map, you're likely not going to use perspective because you want to force it all at the same scale so it's more translatable and easy to read for the viewer. But if you are going to make a world map, and I would actually recommend a regional map with this perspective because it's really hard to create an entire world with perspective into it. It's something that you might do more with regional maps, so kind of keep that in mind. So now I have this nice grouped stamps right here, and I can go and just place them in. I can put one there. I can copy and paste it. All kinds of fun things. I can open it and then go to my width and change the width. And so you'd have these different varying sizes. I can go in like this, put another one right here if I wanted to, copy, paste. I can go in, select all of it, flip, rotate it like this. So now I have kind of a different direction. Select, let's change that transform. There we go, like this. And I can throw in that next one, maybe over here somewhere. Maybe bring the scale, the size down and put it right there. So lots of cool things. So adding in these cliffs along your river and right at the base where this is, you could say even that this is maybe like a fault line or something like that. You can do that if you want to. Go ahead and move this one down here like that. Okay, so now that we've done that, where are we at? 37 changes. There's no need to excuse me, to save quite yet. Let's go ahead and add another one, a larger one right here. Of course, we'll increase increase the size, of course, because it is closer to us, so we should expect it to be a bit bigger. Okay, I think that's enough. We don't really need to add any more. You can if you want to. Actually, you can throw another one right here if you wanted to, along here. It does seem like an okay place to put one like that. Okay, so now we've added in our cliffs. Let's go ahead and move on to the next step. A lot of forests can be found at the base of your mountains, of course. That's pretty normal. And as always, the scale is going to change. So I'll only add in just a couple because look how the scale is so small. A forest is going to be about this big, right? So it's not going to be a lot. Now, there are a couple tricks I'll show you with making forests. Now, because it's such a small scale, you'll probably never see a trunk. So what might work better is to use a bush stamp instead. Bring the density up quite a bit. And the reason why is because when I apply it, I really want them to be dense and together like this to represent kind of a deep-rooted forest. So I'll go ahead and undo that. Make sure it's set to layer 1, okay? Notice how all of my hills and my mountains are at layer 1. Now, I do believe that all of my paths are at layer 2, so I better go ahead and select all my paths and make sure they are also at layer 1. So I'll go ahead and select all my paths. It does look like they are at layer 2, so we'll bring them down to layer 1. In fact, we can put them to layer 0. Okay? Now I'm going to go ahead and take this bush right here, and I'm going to use it to make a forest. Okay, so I'm at the density. We can even increase the area if you wanted to make it larger. It's up to you, so you can make it bigger. Really laggy though when you do that, so you don't have to do that. Let's go ahead and do this. Now I'm going to go ahead and place just a whole bunch right here, like this, just to kind of create these kind of mountain or mountain forests. Let's put another one in here like this. So you see that it goes in front and behind the mountains, all right? That's super important, okay? Now, of course, after you've done that, make sure you throw in a couple single clicks, just a couple randos in there, just to kind of break up the line work, because you're going to expect a couple randos. And of course, do your varying size as well. Go ahead and bring it down another size. Oh, that is the smallest size, I think. So I might have to go in and decrease this size so I have a little bit of small ones. I'll just copy and paste and just throw a bunch in here like this. Okay, throw in a couple. Let's take a look. Yeah, that looks fine. And at a distance, it looks just about right. I can see the shadows of those bushes create a dark line underneath. That's perfect. That's kind of what I want, to kind of show that the interior of the forest is dark so you can't see it. Now there are a couple other tricks that you can also do if you want. I've talked about stylized forests before. You can go ahead and change your blend mode to lighten, and you can apply these stamps. Make sure you go up a layer, by the way, so it's on layer 2, and you can throw a couple lighten stamps to show that there is light showing on the top of the canopies, and it will kind of remove some of the line work like this, so you'll kind of see that your forest is a little bit more stylized by adding in these lighten stamps of the same one as these bushes, okay? We'll go ahead and add them on here like this. And so it kind of gives it this nice highlight, as you would kind of expect, right? As the sun is hitting the top of the trees, not the interior, of course. And so you're going to expect some light on the top. So quick, easy little technique on how to make some really cool looking forests, right? Not complex, easy stuff. I didn't use trees, I used bushes. So let's go ahead and save that. We're going to do one more part of this real quick. We're going to go ahead and apply some stamps that are, you know, human made, not natural. And that way, that will help to force more of the perspective, because mountains, it's really hard, right? There are varying sizes in mountains, but as soon as you put down a human-made structure, then it really puts it into perspective. It really puts it into the scale properly. So we've done all the landscape. That's what you always do first, right? You always make the landscape, and then you move on to the next thing. So let's throw in maybe a castle, a tower, and some other things like that. Okay, maybe we want the tower to be the focus, right? So let's put that maybe closer to us, right? And the reason why I'm bringing it closer is because, you know, you kind of want to see what it looks like, right? So I'll go ahead and throw a tower on top of this plateau rock. It's a great location to put it. Now it's okay if the stamp is a little large, because at least this one, because there's different ways of approaching style with your map, right? Sometimes you want to see the tower, right? You want to be able to see it. So you increase the size a little bit. Of course, this is a very tall tower, but you want to be able to see it. You want to be able to enjoy the details in the art. So you can scale it up just a hair. Now, also notice that I've placed it not also just on top of a plateau, because, hey, height is a natural defense, right? Attackers will have to go uphill to attack you. Your arrows are going to shoot further because you have height advantage, all right? So when you're making towers, fortresses, cities, put them on top of a hill, on top of a plateau rock, or something like that, so that way they have natural defenses. And not also did I put them on top of this plateau, but I overlapped it by putting it's overlapping the line of that plateau in the back, and it's also overlapping the river, okay? So that, again, overlapping is how you create depth. So you have this nice little tower right here, and then if we want, we can put something else in the background here. So maybe we want to put an elven. When I think of trees, I think of elves. So maybe it'd be fun to put some kind of elven some kind of elven structure there. So we'll just pick one, an easy one. Let's say this one right here. Now, this is further in the distance, right? So, of course, we're going to have to drop the scale down. So let's go ahead and put this right on top. And I'm going to scale it down because this is quite a large structure. And again, I'm just going to put it right on top of the hill. Okay, let's put it up a layer. There we go. I'm going to put it right on top right there. And I might even want to throw an elven tower because you would expect some kind of defenses. So let's put one on top of this hill right here. And I'll bring the scale down just a little bit. There we go. So now you have a nice tower and a structure right here. And it's scaled down so it's a little bit smaller. While this one is a little bit bigger because it's closer to you, right? As you would expect. So look carefully. Small, large, right? So each section. So think about that when you're adding that in. Okay, I think that's it. Now, does anyone have any questions about this particular style? Because we've got about 4 more minutes before we move on to top down. So if you have any questions about perspective in this style, let me know right now and I'll go ahead and make sure to answer those questions. It's okay, Nemrod. I understand that you're busy. You're probably not here now, but hey, thank you for making it. Really appreciate it. Dragon, Dreams, and Squirrels, thank you. Really appreciate it. Always glad to have you here in our streams. Absolutely love having familiar faces here. So that pretty much sums up pretty much how you would deal with perspective in the world or regional styles. Just some quick highlights. Remember, place 2 stamps when you start. Place the largest stamp, the largest mountain stamp in section 1 or what you label as section 1 on your map. So nice and big. And then put the smallest mountain stamp in the very back in the horizon, wherever your horizon is. Obviously, if you're making a regional map, you're not going to have this guide right here to work with. So when you do make it, make sure you put down your horizon first as well. Okay, and then you can put down your largest mountain in section 1 or closest to the vantage point, and your smallest mountain in at the horizon line, just right below the horizon, so that way you have 2 stamps with different scale to use as references. So now you know the scale in between the largest and smallest. Hey, welcome, Edward Alfred. Hey, and it's a first time chat as well. I'm so glad you're okay, that you're here. And late is perfectly fine. We're not going to send you to the donjon, okay, to the dungeon, all right? I mean, we could. I mean, this tower right here, we're sending you to lock you up right there in that tower. How dare you be late? I will not have tardiness. Unacceptable. Now that's perfectly all right. So hey, feel free to ask me questions. And I'm not really seeing a lot of questions right now about this this particular style. I'll wait just a few more seconds and see if people have questions. If not, we'll move on to the next step. So I'll go ahead and save while people go ahead and prepare any questions they might have. Super exciting stuff. Thank you guys for doing this one particular this style with me. Again, if you have any questions, ask. If you can't think of a question, don't forget to join our Discord. Make sure that if you do join the Discord, you go to the #Rolls channel, click Inkarnate Roll. You want to get that, because if you don't get that Inkarnate Roll, guess what? You're not going to see all the channels. So make sure that you go get that Inkarnate Roll so you can get all the channels and see all the content that we got. All right, so we finished this one. Let's go on to step 2. Part 2 is going to be battle maps, okay? All right, so let's take a look at what we did here. Yeah, this looks good. I like the way, oh wait, there's a question here. If you added more cliffs, would you need to adjust the width and length? You would have to change the scale the closer you get to you, and adjust the scale down the further they go away from you. You don't have to necessarily, because cliffs vary in size, but for me personally, just for the sake of this guide, I did drop the cliffs down in size the further I went and the closer I got to the horizon. That's just me though. Do I adjust the, oh, you mean the transform? Yes, I do adjust transform for certain things. You'll notice that I transformed this group right here. It's just this one right here, only I just changed the width. That's all. Okay, that's it. I hope that answered that question. Okay, so step 2, we're going to do battle map perspective. It's a bit different from the first one. I did, in my first guide that I made, put a section 1, 2, and 3. But just to keep this video short, I'm only going to have 2 sections in battle map. I'm going to copy this link right now. I'm going to throw it in the chat. Go ahead and clone. this map if you want to follow along in this next one. So I'm just going to go ahead and edit the map. I'm going to open it up, and now we're going to do perspective and top down. And really, the rules are the same, really. Okay? And I'll show you how that works. So let's just get it loaded up, and we'll get started. Okay. Now, you notice how the guide is set up. There's a section 1 and a section 2. Now, in the last guide, I had 3 sections. I'm not going to do that here. Like I said, I'm going to just do 2 sections. Now, when you're working with battle maps, you need to know that when you're using perspective, the farthest point away from you, which I'm going to make designated section 2, that section will probably no longer be usable for your players to walk on, okay? So the section that has your vantage point the closest to you, you're going to want to make that fairly larger than the other section where you're going to see things farther down away from you, okay? Because that section that's further away from you won't be playable in the VTT or a tabletop because your token is going to be huge in comparison to all the stamps in section 2. So just be sure that when you do this with battle maps, that the majority of the map that's closest to you takes up the majority of the map, because that's going to be the playing field in which your players are going to be walking around on, all right? Because they're clearly not going to be walking in section 2 where the perspective is way down, okay? Like if you're making a floating island, clearly if your player's token goes off the floating island, they're going to fall to their death. And as entertaining as that is, that's probably not what you want to do, okay? So always remember that the area in which is closest to you in battle maps is going to be the main area where your players are going to be running around chopping off villains' heads, okay? All right, so factor that in. Now, for those of you who might have a hard time with perspective in fantasy battle map, what really, this is watercolor, but it works in battle map as well. Sometimes it's nice to make a 2D diagram. I've done this before where if I want to show a diagram, it kind of helps to kind of give me a visual. So I'll show you how I generally go about doing that. Let's go ahead and turn off the shadow here. So there are a couple options here. We could make a floating island. That's the easiest one. A floating island. You could make a airship showing bottom, or you can show the top of a mountain, okay? All those things work. So let's say that I wanted to make, just for fun, the top of a mountain, okay? I could go ahead and use a 2D front-facing guide to help me out, okay? So this section right here would obviously be section 2, while this section right here is section 1. So that little guide right there can be somewhat helpful to you when you're kind of confused about, well, wait a minute, what am I doing here? This little 2D guide right here, just simple line work, it's all that it is, will kind of help as a reference for you to work with, all right? So I don't know, what are you folks thinking? Should we make airship, floating island? Should we make a tall mountain in which there's like maybe a temple at the top, and then down below is where, you know, you've got like a valley and some hills and stuff? What y'all thinking? What you thinking? What do you want to do, folks? Tell me what you're thinking. What are we doing? Airships? Airships. Yeah. Let's do an airship. Okay. All right. Well, I probably won't even need the guide for an airship because it's really obvious what's the foreground and what's going to be the background. Oh, wait. We got meditation temple. Okay. Well, which one is it, folks? The battle's on now. It's time to vote. Is it going to be a meditation temple or is it going to be an airship, folks? Please let me know what you want. Pick. Will it be airships or will it be meditation temple? I like them both. I mean, they're so cool. Maybe an airship docked at a meditation temple. Oh, boom. Someone just read my mind. I like it. Okay, well then let's do it. All right, let's not waste any time. Boom! Yeah! The dragon squirrel has spoken. Woo! All right. Okay. Well, this isn't too hard. This is kind of easy. Oh, there is something that I forgot to mention. Shoot. I'm so dumb. One moment. I'm going to go ahead and save this and go back to the regional real quick. It's something that I totally forgot to mention because I'm super dumb. But bear with me for just 1 second. I know you're hyped. We'll get this. I'm sorry to bring you back to this, but I got to go back to this real quick because there's a neat trick that I want to show you, and it's super important that I show it to you because it can really add some character to your map. And I do apologize for backtracking, so naughty, you can send me to the dungeon where I probably belong. because naughty man, naughty man. One thing I forgot to mention is atmospheric distortion. I forgot to mention this. Atmospheric distortion is where when something is super far away, you kind of notice that it blurs and you see a bluish tint to it, right? That's called atmospheric distortion, right? And so what's really nice to do with your horizon to show distance is to select some of your stamps that are in the background. These, let's say this section right here, and go to blur. Okay, and what that will do is show some distance. Now I'm going to change the blur of each one, so the further away, the more blurry it becomes. So I'll go ahead and select these two and bring the blur down just a little bit more. Okay, and then make these extra blurry. Okay, now this is what's going to create your illusion of ambient occlusion, or not ambient occlusion, sorry. It's too many technical terms to memorize here. This is what's called atmospheric distortion. You'll notice that the further objects are away from you, if you just select those stamps and then just click the blur, you can totally do that. So that's what I recommend doing, is for those stamps that are in the far background, just go ahead and blur those. And what it will do is, because they're blurred, the stamps in the foreground are going to be sharper, and that's going to focus your eye on the sharpened stamp. So I'll just continue adding just a little bit more blur like that. Now if I take a step back, you'll notice that it's blurred in section 3 and sharp in section 2 and 1. Okay, so remember, if you want to create a little bit of atmospheric distortion, a little bit of realism to your horizon, feel free to blur the stamps that are right there in the horizon or section 3, all right? It's just a little extra thing to add in there to make it look nice. Thank you for bearing with me on this little backtrack. You know, this is what happens when you don't get enough sleep. You're kind of like, whoa, what did I forget now? Did I leave the stove on? Did I leave the gas on? Nah, it'll be fine. Okay. Well, thank you again for backtracking with me there on a little adventure going backwards in time. Come on, Maddie. Time moves forward, buddy. What are you doing? Okay, we'll go back to our maps. We're going to go into our battle map perspective. We'll edit it. Thank you very much. I do hope that that little blur trick was helpful. I like to use it a lot. It's very, very helpful, especially if you want things in the foreground to pop out, right? Because in the far distance, you want more focus on the things in the foreground. So it's always nice to throw in a little bit of atmospheric distortion by just simply blurring your stamps. Okay, so let's go ahead and create our floating island, or not floating island, sorry, a mountain pretty much. And I mentioned this in the last stream, making mountains is with Battlemap Styles can be a little complex and difficult. So we're going to stick with, let's see here. Let's go with using composites first. Now, when it comes to showing height, my trick is pretty simple. And I'll show you how it goes. So we're going to take a larger stamp first. I'm going to use a green one because the ground is grass. But the higher up we're going to go, I might transition the stamps to, and I can go ahead and delete this line, by the way. I actually don't need sections because we're doing a mountain. So there won't be any sections. Okay. Well, there goes my plan from doing that. Just bye-bye. So the first stamp you place down is going to be the base of your mountain. Okay, so I'll place it maybe right here like this. So there's the base. This is that first ledge of your mountain. Okay, we'll go ahead and throw in one more grassy one in another size. And we're going to show another layer in the mountain. So let me bring this size down. We might have to rotate it a little bit like this. Maybe increase the size. Okay, let's go ahead and throw that one. So another layer. Okay, we're going to keep adding more and more layers to create a peak, an apex that goes to the top. Okay, let's go ahead and throw down maybe, besides a green one, let's throw down some brown ones now. Okay, so let's throw down another one. 1 second. Well, oops, I'm loading here. Let's go ahead and find the right size that we want for this. We'll rotate. Let's say, ooh, no, not that one. That won't work. Just gotta find the right size. That can be a little time consuming, but you know, when you have these composite stamps, it's much, much easier. So let's put one there. And let's keep adding more. We're just going to keep stacking them up. And then I'll show you how to do the depth part shortly. Let me just go ahead and make sure that I put each size down. Let's put another one right there. And let's put another one in the center right here. And this is pretty much, well, we'll leave that right there. We'll put the temple and the airship bay right there. So let's go ahead and put that one right there. Okay. So now you have your various layers of your mountains going upward, okay? So the way I'll go about doing this is I'm going to show you how I show height. And height, for me, is all about your texturing and the color that you use. So this is one that's really easy. You have this texture right here, and I'm going to go ahead and find it real quick, and I'm going to change the advanced settings and make it a bit darker, okay? I think that looks dark enough. Let's just apply it to the entire FG like this. Press enter. And now everything's kind of this dark green here. I'm also going to add this to my favorites. And then I'm going to also add this one to my favorites. I'm going to take that color that I just had and I'm going to go, or this one right here, and I'm going to change this one to create a new one. So I'll go back, brightness, bring it up to maybe 71. Okay, and I'm going to apply it real quick just to see what it looks like. Undo, that looks fine. Let's go back in here. I'm going to favorite that one as well. And then I'm going to take this one right here, go to filters and increase the brightness quite a bit. There we go. I'm going to apply it, undo it. I just wanted to show and recently used, and then favorite that as well. So now I have basically these three. Oopsie, I don't think I favorited that one. Let me see, which one did I not favorite? Nope, I didn't favorite that one. Okay. So you'll see in my favorites here that I've got a range of different brightnesses of this particular texture. Okay. So the way that I portray height is the darkest texture is going to be your ground level. And for every tier, and by tier, I mean this. I'll show you what I mean by tier. For every tier, I'm going to be changing a little bit of the brightness. So for every single one of the spaces, this is basically a tier like that one, this tier right here, this one right here. I'm going to be adjusting the brightness a little bit further up, the higher up I go. And the rationale behind that is that if something, the sun, when it's up high or in a different direction, the things that are higher up means the more sunlight is going to bathe and hit it, right? But there are mountain ranges and things that are in the way. And so the further down, you can make it a little bit darker. So contrast is what we're using to show depth. Okay, and I'll show you how I do that. So let me go ahead and just delete all these paths. I don't need them. And let's go ahead and paint maybe the largest or the highest peak with the lightest green. And because I kind of screwed up, I forgot to use the brown texture actually instead. So let's go ahead and click this, and I'll of course have to make changes to this as well. Let me go ahead and just apply it first to make sure it's the right color I like. Yeah, that works just fine. We're going to keep that, and I'll favorite this one, of course, and then I'll go ahead and change the brightness of this one as well. We'll bring the brightness up. There we go, and of course I'll favorite that one as well. Okay, so now I have that. So first step, let's go ahead and paint in the first tier. And it's okay if you go a little bit over. It's fine. Oh, not that one. This one right here, I believe. Let me just verify that's the right one. Is this the right one? No, it's this one, I think. One second, let's apply it. Is it not working? What is happening here? Am I a texture? There we go. Gotta love this. Okay, so I'll go ahead and apply this texture to this tier. And if you overlap a little bit, don't worry about it. It's okay. You're going to repaint them in anyway. So let's go ahead and do this. Now you notice right away that when I apply this lighter color, you'll see right away that due to contrast, this green part pops out more, right? You notice that a little bit, that it's popping out, right? So I'll go ahead and apply a different lighter green to this one. Oopsie, that didn't work. I think that's the same color. Let's go with this one. Or do I have to change it? One second here. Let me just verify. Oops. For some reason, I cannot select this texture. Whoa, what is going on here? Super bizarre. That sounds like a bug to moi. Naughty thing, you. How dare you? Go ahead and add that favorite in there and see what just happened right there. That's super weird. Not sure I understand what happened there, but okay dokie. Okay, all right. The bazaar, yes, it is time to refresh. Let me go ahead and fill in this next tier, and then we'll go ahead and save and refresh the page. This sometimes happens, and you know, it's an easy fix. Don't worry, it's not complex. All you have to do is just save and refresh the page. Of course, save. You want to save, all right? Don't just be like, well, I'm going to reload it. Well, no, you're going to want to save your changes, naturally. Okay, let's go ahead and fill in this next tier, and then we'll move on to the next one, okay? All right, let's go ahead and save. And then we'll just refresh the page. Now, if you ever bump into errors like that, something buggy, something weird happens, save and refresh, okay? Generally what happens is that the history fills up with so many changes over a given period of time that it kind of requires a little bit more resources on your machine. So what you do is just save and refresh the page, and that will completely clear the map history, and that way you don't have to, you won't experience that lag. So as these things build up like this, you can't really, unless you go to restore, you can't really get rid of this history without refreshing the page. So I'll go ahead and refresh. I'm just going to go ahead and click the refresh button a couple times, and we'll reopen up the page. Excellent. So right now we're talking about contrast to make your things pop out. I explained this in the last stream, the mountain range stream, that really using brightness is how you determine depth, and that's going to include contrast. So we go ahead and you see here that I applied this kind of darker green texture to the base, and then I add this other another variation of darker green right here. And in fact, we can even bring this down a little bit more. Let's bring it down. Just see what it looks like if I bring it down. What I'm trying to do is make sure that the transition is noticeable. You have to make sure that the changes in the color that you're varying, they have to be noticeable. It has to be an obvious difference between this ground green and the top green. Or do you use a tablet like Wacom or a tablet like an iPad? I am using a tablet. Yes, absolutely. I believe it's a Wacom. Yeah, I am using a Wacom tablet. I'm using a pen. They are fantastic, extremely easy, useful when you're trying to do texturing and painting. But I only use the pen when I'm doing painting, really. I very rarely use the pen for anything else. I like to use my mouse. And the reason why is because trying to do single clicks to select all the tools, the pen pressure may not be right. It's just a pain in the butt to navigate the editor when you're using a pen. Navigating is so much better when you just use a mouse, okay? You're really gonna use your pen for only a handful of use cases. I never use it outside of just texturing, maybe putting down mountain ranges or making a river with the path tool. It's generally going to do, and yes, you need one, Jeremy, you absolutely do. You know, there's a whole range of tablets out there on the cheap if you want them. I had a Huion T190. It worked just fine. I never had issues with it. As long as I continued to update the drivers, it worked just fine, because some of the tablets are very pricey. Okay, as I'm sure all of you know, they can be pricey. Yeah, well, Wacom is fantabulous. Yeah, really, MFG game time, absolutely. I recommend the Huion. It's decent price. It works just fine. It'll last a little while. Clearly, it's not a better quality as a Wacom, but it is within a little bit more manageable on the economic side. It's a little bit more economical, at least in my opinion. So if you can, try to get a tablet. If you can't, I understand they are expensive. Okay, so again, remember what I said. You want varying variation. So you'll notice that this dark green stands out very differently from this next tier. It's brighter. And the next tier that goes up, it's even brighter, because the higher up, the more exposed to the sun you are. That's the logic, right? So the higher up, more sunlight. So that's the prevailing logic here. Now let's go in to my favorites, and I'm going to use a darker brown, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and just apply it like this. It's okay if it overlaps a little bit. That's fine. We're going to get to blending and all that stuff later. Let's go ahead and use this first brown like this. And then we'll go in with our lighter variation and then put that on top like this. Okay, and then I'll boost up the brightness on this one a little bit more to give it the supreme brightness right here on top, right here like this, because this is the highest point. So it's going to be the brightest. Okay, so now we have the basics. This is just the basic coats. We're going to be adding more coats as we go, but this is just a guide to kind of tell you where the height is. We're going to add in shadows, of course, as well, because shadows are really are what is going to help to make these pop out, and we'll get to that. Okay, where are we at for time? 11:20. This stream might go on for another hour, so it might be 2.5 hours long, because when it comes to what you want me to make here, it's going to take a little bit longer, so bear with me. I'll try to make it as quick as possible. Okay, so now that we've done that part, we can start now taking some textures from the favorites and start applying them here and there. So my first step is I'm going to use the texture that I used for the ground level, and I'm going to use that to start making a little bit of ambient occlusion along the edge like this. So I have this nice dark line right here, and you're going to put that just along the base here. Okay, we're going to create more transition, don't worry, but for right now, this is that first step. Okay, so you have that dark line, and you notice right away that that dark line already kind of made that tier pop up a little bit, right? Let's go ahead and take this brown texture, really bring the brightness down quite a bit. Okay, and I'm going to drop the opacity down as well. Let's just see how it looks up against here to make sure it looks dark enough. Not dark enough. Let's go with a little bit darker. There we go. Okay, we'll bring this dark piece here. Don't worry, we're going to use the edgy brush to break this stuff up, or the soft brush, whichever one is your preference. So you have this nice dark edge here. I know it's really pops out at you. Don't worry, we're going to be diffusing that a little bit. Okay, take that same texture and apply it as well on every single ledge. This is just that first bit of ambient occlusion to show that there's depth. I got a comment earlier today. Someone said, "You're really annoying. I hate your voice." Someone said that to me today, and you too. I was like, "Oh wow, I didn't know I was that annoying." I thought it was so funny. I started busting up. I'm like, okay, well that's rather blunt. Appreciate that. What a giggle I had out of that. I love it when people do weird stuff. I'm kind of weird myself. Okay. So now that we've done that little bit of ambient occlusion, we might want to put another one too, a little bit darker at the base right here. I'll go ahead and bring that brightness down. Winning! Yeah, I don't really understand it myself, but hey, whatever. To each their own. I'm not going to get mad at people. Whatever. Everyone's got their thing. It happens. It's perfectly okay. I ain't going to throw no stink about it. Okay, let's go ahead and add in that dark line around here. Hey, sometimes you got some hecklers, And you know what the best thing to do with a heckler? Just ignore the living poop out of them. Forget them. It's not important. Their opinion is not important in the slightest bit. If someone's mean to you, don't give them what they want, which is your attention. Just ignore those poops. Ignore them. Poops, you poops. Okay, so now we've added that first ambient occlusion along each ledge. Now I'll go in and do some single clicking, use maybe this edgy brush right here. This thing works wonders. Let's go ahead and apply that edge with a small brush. Let me just take a look what it looks like first. Maybe a little bit smaller opacity. Whenever you're working with an edgy brush, of course, the opacity is funky dunky, so you've got to bring it down a little bit. So let's go with 15. Okay, bring the scale down. Remember, you're doing single clicks to break up this edge right here. That's it, just simple. And remember, we're going to get a lot of changes here adding up. You're just breaking up that solid line. Okay, you want to break up that solid line with these single clicks. And we're going to paint in shadows and more ambient occlusion shortly. First, we just need to break up the silliness that we created here with these lines. That one's done. Oops, I missed this one out here. Okay, that one's done. Now let's take this darker one, do some single clicks in here. And I might have to diffuse it a little bit more by maybe putting a little bit of green over it, because that line is extremely, extremely thick. And that's okay. We can fix that. So we'll just do some single clicks here. And you kind of get this nice kind of like, I just love the edgy brush. Those little cells just look like maybe little stones or some texturing there. And it just looks so nice when you do that. So I'm just a really big fan of doing that. Let's bring this scale down even smaller because we're dealing with a smaller space. So we'll throw in some smaller ones here. So when it comes to texturing and putting in the depth, it's all about process. You're going through various steps. We stacked a bunch of composites. Then we decided the color of each tier to represent height. And we're blending in. Right now we're doing blending. And then from there, we'll throw in the really hard, thick, dark ambient occlusion lines. And then we'll also paint in shadows. And I'll show you a couple techniques on how to do that. And there's a wide range, a variety of range of ways that you can do shadows. Okay, so I'll show you how to do that as well. Let's go ahead and do this single click thing again. We'll increase the size a bit and just put some along this edge here. It'll be a little bit darker, I think. There we go. All right, so just put in these edges here. It's always nice to kind of have some, oh, there we go. I just hit 400 changes there. Naughty, naughty user. Okay. You know what I think it is? I think I'm just a little too goofy for some folks. Some people really just like serious. Why so serious? Yeah, me, no, I can't do that, man. I just can't be serious for more than about 20 seconds. I mean, you all know this. That's why you're here. You're all here to watch me make a total clown of myself. Of course. That's what we do here, right? We just make a clown of myself. Okay. All right, let's take a look. Ooh, I do think I missed another one right here. We're almost there. Some single clicks with a smaller brush size here. And then I think we'll be done with that. And then we can move on to the next step, which is highlights and shadows. And I'll show you how I do my highlights. Now you'll notice that these cliffs right here have this kind of bright light along the top part, okay? I really need to implement this in my lizard folk settlement map. This adds so much detail to the hills and makes them more alive. Absolutely. Absolutely. The edgy brush is your friend. Let me tell you right now. Okay. Now, we've established that this color right here, of this particular, the highest peak right here, we've established that this highest peak right here is hitting the most amount of light. So it only makes sense to use that same texture to create the highlights. So we'll go ahead and find that texture, this light one right here, and we're going to create some highlights. And I'm just going to single click right along here, along this edge right here. You can just do a single drag line if you want as well, like this, to kind of create some highlights. So we'll put some highlights here as well. And actually, I should decide where my light source is first. So real quick, let's do that. My bad. Hard to know where highlights are if you don't, if you don't have your light source. What a dumb butt, huh? Okay, let's quickly throw in a light source. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a light source. These are going to be rays of light, basically. So when the time comes to do your shadowing and your light, of course, you're going to want to first designate a light source. Where is your light source going to be? Let's just have it here. This is just a general direction. Just so you know, for most battle maps, if you don't want to deal with complex lighting and shadows, just have your light source just be at the very top like this. So it's like, let's say it's just midday. Just have your light source just be straight down, okay? That way you don't have to do all these elongated shadows and all that stuff like that. It always works best. It always works best, in my opinion, to just have a noon style map, and that will be much easier for you, okay? Because shadows is a little bit of work in the tool. We haven't created like a shadow layer yet or anything like that. So shadows require a little bit of work. So to make your life easier, you can set it to pretty much midday, and that way you don't have to create these elongated shadows. Just makes your life easier. But if you are going to have a light source that is not midday, and you want to have maybe 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, where the sun is going a little further, a little bit closer to the horizon, closer to the west, then you can do that. So I'll have this light source facing this way. And of course, wherever the light source is facing or projecting, of course, your shadows are going to be projecting away. Now, when it comes to shadows, sometimes when you're painting your shadow or using a path tool or whatever, sometimes it's hard because you have to keep adding all these strokes to get it right. You can use the path tool to designate where your paths are at, where your shadows are at. So I could say I want some shadows here, like this. So that area is where my shadow is going to be. I'm going to put some maybe here, all along here. So I'll have some shadow there. And so this way you can kind of tell where your shadows are at. This is going to be very helpful if you're confused on where to put your shadows, right? You're just going to use these paths as a guide, and that way all you have to do is just fill in those paths sections with a darker texture or the path tool. And so that way it's easier to do your shadows, because it's hard to guess what the shadow will look like, right? So using the path tool is a great way to do that, okay? All right, so we'll do the highlights. And Siri Myth Killer said that they like to use the soft brush, and you absolutely can use the soft brush. There's more than one way to do something in the tool. That's the beauty of the tool, is that if you don't want to use the edgy brush, use a soft brush. Perfectly acceptable. No one's going to get upset for you for doing that. It's perfectly okay to use the edgy brush or the soft brush. Totally up to you. I'm also going to increase the brightness on this because I want to add a little bit brighter edges. Now, I'm adding the highlights where the sun is. So if the sun is coming at this direction, going this way, clearly the highlights are going to be on the left side where the sun is, okay? So I, of course, make sure that my highlights are going to be facing where the sun is going to be hitting it. So along here, there'll be some highlights along here. You don't have to use the edgy brush. You can use the soft brush. Totally up to you, okay? Let's go ahead and take this one, really bring the brightness up. Let's just test it and see what it looks like. Is it bright enough? Just want to verify. Nope, that doesn't look right. Let's go up even more. We want to make sure we really get that brightness in there. Perfect. Just put it all along this ledge here. Just do some single clicks here. Kind of give it a little bit more character to it. It just looks like a straight line, and that looks kind of weird. So adding in a little bit of this, and let's add in some highlight along here. You would expect just a little bit along this edge. Let's keep going, and of course along this edge as well, you would find some highlights. Just increase your brush size if you want it to be, if you don't want to go through so many different strokes. You get to do it, so we'll go with a couple ones here. There we go. Okay. So now we have our highlights. I've applied them. Now to add the shadow parts, okay? Now there are a lot of different ways to go about shadows, but each method is determined by what you're working with. Now, when you're painting, you clearly can't, unless you flatten, you can't really paint over a stamp without flattening first, okay? Now, a lot of times you might not want to flatten your stamps because you might want to make changes, okay? So there's a method that you can use without flattening, and you can just use the path tool to do it. But you can also use another technique as well by just making any stamps that are in the shadows section, that's wherever these dotted lines are at, by just taking in a small stamp that's, here, I'll just show you real quick. This way is a little bit harder, but I'll show you how I do it. I think the path tool would probably work a little better, but I'll show you how I go about things. So I'll push this up a layer, and you can go ahead and place the stamp right on top as you would expect, right? Make sure it's set to the right size. Okay, and if I drop the brightness down, you'll notice that this is kind of the dark side. Let's go ahead and bring this down. This is where the dark side of, you can just go ahead and darken some single stamps and put them on top, all in the areas where the shadow is. Now that's a little bit of work, so if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. But you could put all that there so you could demonstrate the shadow part, or you could just use the path tool, and that's perfectly fine too. You want to boost the size up, increase this, make sure it's set to free draw. Let's take a look at it. That looks fine. Let's do that. And I'll just do one section. I'll show you what I mean. Make sure it's set to a layer above the stamp, so that way it goes above it. So I'll go ahead and apply this here. Just go ahead and put this section in like this. I'm going to fill it in a little bit. Give it a second here. We'll fill it in. Okay, now we have that. Now you'll notice that it looks a little weird, right? It's just pure dark. Let's change to make it blurry, and let's also drop the opacity down. Now I can go ahead and delete this, and you'll notice right there that you have this nice shadow right there, movable, editable, changeable, so that way you can change it as you see fit. So you have this nice shadow there. Again, make sure it's set a layer above, because if it's a layer below, it won't work right. You're trying to shade in the shadow of the stamp. So there's step one, okay? So that's pretty much the easiest way. Just know that the path tool has a limitation. Its width is 5. So the larger area that you're working with, you're probably gonna have to do a little bit more work. So this technique has caveats, as you would expect, right? Let's also apply where the shadow is going to be for these top parts. So let me apply that real quick. So we'll have some shadow right here and add a little nodule right there. Okay, there you go. So I don't want to forget that. I'm going to select this path again, so that way I have to work with it. And I'm going to make, let's first create, oopsie, that is not a path. What am I doing? Naughty, naughty. Let's go ahead and create the shadow. And I've already, it's going to keep the same settings from the last path that I selected. So it's already done the blur. It's already done the right opacity. So it's already set up for you. Perfect. Let's go ahead and just push this out a little bit right here to get some shadow there. There we go. There's your first one. That's done. Now you can go in here. Put your shadow in. These might not be the most accurate shadows, by the way, but I just want to show you how to do it. It will probably require a little bit more planning. So, because how elongated your shadows are is determined by your by where the sun is. So the closer the sun is to the horizon, the more elongated your shadows are going to be. Okay, just so you know, and I can provide a little diagram for that if that's helpful to you. I'll show you real quick. One moment while I set this up for you. We're just going to call this the arch of the sun. I'm going to go ahead and curve it. This is basically your arch of the sun, right? And I'm going to take a couple options. We've got a mushroom sun right here. Ha 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 ha, mushroom sun. Yes, yes. And then we're going to go ahead and take a stamp, and I'm just going to go ahead and place it down. And I'm going to show you how that lighting works. It will be a little helpful. We're going to go ahead and turn off the shadow on this one. Okay, so if your sun is straight up, then of course is right at midday, you don't have to worry about any kind of elongated shadows, okay? It's going to look like that. But if your sun is way over here like this, then your shadow is probably going to move. It's going to look a little bit like this. Let me remove this, copy, paste, bring this down a layer. I'm going to go ahead and bring the brightness all the way down. And I'll go ahead and blur this as well and bring the opacity down. So where the sun is determined on the elongation of your shadow, okay? So you'll notice that, yeah, who doesn't like a mushroom sun, right? Who doesn't like a nuclear reactor mushroom? I mean, who doesn't like that, right? So the position of your sun really will determine the elongation of your shadows, okay? So if it's midday like this, your shadows are probably going to be just regular like this, right? That's going to be midday. You don't have to add a whole lot of crazy shadow stuff. But if your sun is like at sunset or sunrise, since this is the left, we'll say this is west. Okay, this is west. then your shadow, of course, is going to be rather elongated because it's closer to the horizon and causing the shadow to stretch out like that. Okay, so just a real simple guide with shadows. Okay, again, I just want to recommend that if you don't want to deal with elongated shadows, just make it midday. It's just going to be easier for you, okay, as a mapper. But you can, of course, experiment. Maybe I can make a guide or do a tutorial or a stream on shadows. And I'm not even really the best at shadow work. We have some even better shadow workers here. For instance, Jeremy is the master of the shadows. I will let you know right now. Jer is amazing. Okay, let's keep going. Just wanted to quickly give you a quick demo. Where are we at? 40 minutes? Okay, cool. We're doing all right. These things are time consuming. I know. Let's go ahead and add in the next shadow here. This. Go ahead and throw it in here. Just going to go ahead and fill in the whole thing to kind of create that shadow that I want. I'll first just make the edges, and I can just fill it in as I see fit. Okay, I'm also noticing this is on layer 1, so I'll have to bring that up, of course. Make sure you fill it all in. Yes, well, when this mushroom goes supernova, it's going to be a crazy black hole, right? Totally. Love it. Okay, there we go. I think that's right. Let's push it up a layer. It needs to go up a layer. Oh, no, that was fine. Let's go up one just to make sure that I have it right. There we go. That was fine. Okay, now I can go in and delete that path. There we go. Next shadow is done. Oh, I see I missed a spot right there, and I made some errors right there. Oops. That's what I get for doing it on layer 2. Layer 1, my bad. But you get the general idea. Okay, let's also go ahead and fill this part in. This next part. So just give me a moment, and I'll fill that in. And I'm going to do it 2 different ways, actually. The way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to paint the edge of these cliffs with the path tool, and then I'll paint in the rest. Okay, kind of a quick workaround, easier if I just go ahead and put this in the shadow like this. There we go. And also I want to do the same for right here. All this is going to be in the shadow. Right here, and all along here is going to be shadow. There we go. And along here, the shadow. Okay. All right, there we go. So some shadow work there. There we go. So now it's a little bit darker there. Now I can just go in and just paint to make it a little bit easier. So I'll go in with color black, bring the opacity down, and something I want to mention about shadows is that the closer with the sun, it's a bit different. The shadows are not going to be quite as hard, but the closer the light source is to the object, the harder the shadow line is going to be. So if you had a lamp right next to a crate, then the shadow is going to be harder edges, and it's going to be a bit darker shadow, okay? But we're not adding that in yet, but I just want to let you know that there is a difference between the hard edge shadow and the softer edge shadows. The farther the light source is, the blurrier or the softer the edge of the shadow will be. So just kind of factor that in, okay? Now let's go ahead and throw in this dark color right here, and we'll just go ahead and paint it in. Oopsie, I wanted to bring this, I have it set to the edgy brush. And using the edgy brush is also really nice because you can kind of create some different edges, some interesting edges for your shadows. So that's really helpful. So we'll go in like this and just paint in this whole thing. There you go, like this. Okay, now I can go ahead and delete these paths real quick. Let's delete these paths. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now you have some shadows. That took forever, but we're at 1,049 changes. Oopsie, my bad. It happens. It happens, okay? Whew, it is warm in here. All right, we're getting there, folks. All right, so far, so good. Not the best shadow work, but with the limited time we have, it will work. All right. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. All right. So now we've done all that stuff, and technically I should do more, probably some more work along this edge right here, probably, but I think really, you get the general idea about it. Just making sure that you do the proper amount of blending with your textures. Okay, let's go ahead and add on some human stuff, and then we'll do the background, and then we'll call it good. Okay, sweet. So at this top right here, we talked about having a kind of a temple of some kind. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so one thing we can do is kind of set the scale. So we've added all this landscape, and we didn't really know what we wanted for scale, right? Because we ended up adding all these natural formations. So when you add all these natural formations, it's hard to tell what the scale is. So by adding some stamps that have some more human quality to it, you end up now setting the scale. So it's kind of helpful. So let's say that we want this one here. And now if the color isn't right, if you notice that this looks wrong and it's off, don't worry about that. Go to blend mode, luminosity, and you'll notice that it picks up that brown quality of the texture underneath it and drop the brightness down because it's in the shadow. Okay, just like you would bring the saturation or the brightness up, okay, if you wanted to do it in the light. So I'll take another one right here. We'll put this one here, and this one's going to be in the light, so it's perfectly fine. Let's change the blend mode to luminosity. There we go. And so you'll kind of catch a little bit of green on your steps, like there's some moss growing on your steps. That's kind of nice, right? So now we've set the scale. So now we know that these are these are staircases. So of course, you're now going to use that as scale. Okay, so we might have to end up changing some things. Let's go with kind of choosing what we're going to create, maybe some kind of pagoda on the top there, an airship maybe parking somewhere. Let's go ahead and create our human element. So I'm going to bring this up, and we're going to create a kind of a platform. So I'll piece these stamps together like this, and we're going to create a human part. So we'll put these together, put this one together like this. There we go. Okay, let's add in another one right there. Okay, so we're kind of creating the human part. So all of this will be kind of a platform area in which people can get off the airship and walk around. And of course, I'll boost the size up a little bit more to show height and put some along here as well. 1 second while I put these together. Put one there. Okay, we'll keep going. Let's see here. This looks about right, I think. Yeah, that looks about right. That was fine. Add another one there. Make sure it's up a layer. I want it on top, so it's above those ones. Okay, and I made them a little bit. You notice that I made the stamps, again, just a little bit bigger to show kind of this idea of height. So this brick wall section is just a little bit smaller. That's just to help to kind of show the height difference. Okay, let's go ahead and throw in another one. Let's do this one right here, I think, along this edge. This will work just fine. And then I think that's it. We can go ahead and throw this last one right here, I think. Let's just double check. Okay. Now, of course, I've made changes. So, of course, I'll have to retexture this. Yeah, it was a lot of work texturing all that, but that's okay. Because sometimes, you know, you might change your mind about things. And that's normal when you're working on your map. Don't feel bad if you make changes. Is it going to be extra work? Of course it is. But it's okay. Changes are good. Change is a good thing. It's going to help to make you a better mapper. So don't worry about it if you make a mistake. If you're like, well, I actually don't like that, I have to retexture. Perfectly normal. Don't worry about it. Okay, let's keep going. There we go. I can all piece these together to kind of create a little, I'm going to create a little dock right here. This section right here is going to be where the airship is going to dock right here. And so we'll put like maybe some docks to represent a platform or something for people to get off the ship. So we'll create an airship dock that's going to be coming from that circled area right there where people will be getting off and stuff like that. And I think I'm going to decrease the size of this as well because it seems like this is a little too big. So I'll bring them down a little bit more. Let's go with 28, bring this scale a little bit down a little bit more. Okay, let's take a step back and just look at it so far. So far, so good. Okay, let's go pick a texture that I want to be on top of this. So I'll probably pick, I think a light texture would probably be best. So there are a couple options here. You can use this wizard stone floor, light floor. That looks kind of nice. We can increase the brightness so that it kind of matches a little bit with the lighter stones and this stamp, these wall stamps. And also I'm going to want to, of course, bring the scale of it down. You always want to bring the scale. Whenever you scale down stamps, you're probably going to want to scale down the textures to boot. Okay? All right, that's just the way it is. So let me just apply that real quick here, just see how that looks. A little too dark for my taste, but I think it should work for now. Let's go ahead and wherever I see wall, I'm going to apply some of that texture to it. So if there's wall here, let's apply the texture there. Let's apply it here, all along here, like this. And then we can bring the size down and go with our edgy brush. And then we can go in with some single clicks like this. If you want, you can kind of fade it out a little bit if you want. That's up to you. Let's increase the size, add a little more here. Perfect. Along here. And maybe along here. Okay. So now you have some nice stonework there. Any questions so far? How's everyone doing? Doing all right? I hope you are doing well. Okay. I hope this is making sense so far. All right. So wherever you had those right there, you're obviously going to want to add in some kind of texture that's going to match in with it. And of course, since I've added in walls like this, you're probably going to want to add in some dark, thick lines to represent ambient occlusion. And I'm just going to use the soft brush, not edge. I'm going to bring the size down. Let's say 40 for now. I'm using black. So of course it's going to pop out. I'm just along this ledge right here. I'm just going to put a thick, maybe even thicker than that, a thick line like this. And what this will do is kind of denote the idea of height, because you got these flat lines, and adding in this ambient occlusion right there will help to make it pop out and to designate height. Okay, so I'll go ahead and throw in this nice thick line here. There we go. So now you have that thick line there. You notice right away that those, boom, popped out right away because I threw in that dark, thick line right there to really make it pop out. Again, ambient occlusion. All right, definitely throw in your ambient occlusion. Really, really helpful to make things pop out. Now, of course, you can't paint over stamps. So what you can do, though, is, of course, use the path tool. And you can do ambient occlusion. Let's turn the blur off. Let's increase the size. Let me just put one down real quick, see what it looks like. Increase the size. Let's also have the path have a little bit more blur. Bring that down. That looks good. One moment. Let's bring this a little bit darker. And I really want to increase that blur shadow. Let's maybe put a blur down and increase the darkness. That looks fine. And the width. Okay. Now I can go in, of course, and add in my ambient occlusion in the areas where stamps are kind of in the way. So I'll do that. Let me just increase this. Let me just make sure that I have it right. That should be a little bit darker. Let me bring the blur size down. That will probably help. There we go. Much better. Okay. Now I can go in along here and continue my ambient occlusion along these ledges, because you want to show that depth, and that ambient occlusion is what's really going to help to make that pop out. Okay, there we go. So now we've added in that and it definitely pops out a heck of a lot more. If it's a little too dark, don't worry about it. You can just change this. This is a little dark to me. That's okay. You can change that. Totally up to you how you want to go about doing that. I can bring the opacity down so it's not quite as dark. That's the beauty with paths, is that they're editable. Okay, if it's textured, you have to retexture, right? If you make a mistake. So paths are very, very useful. I recommend using them, okay? Let's keep doing ambient occlusion around the rest of them, or at least a couple of them, to kind of show you the rest where we're at here. So let's finish along this ledge, all along here. And I don't recommend putting it in front of the staircase, but to the side of it. That's just my suggestion. Let's go and put a little bit in here as well. There we go. Where are we at for time? 55. We're not too far off. I'll try to make this as quick as possible, okay? So let me add that ambient occlusion, and you'll notice, again, right, that nice, dark, thick line just made that pop out, right? So you're going to do that to every single one of these ledges. Every single one of these ledges. You really want to throw in that dark, thick line that's going to help to really make it pop out. Again, ambient occlusion. It's that shadow work where the ground touches the base of the object that's on the ground. Okay, that's what ambient occlusion basically is. Okay, we'll put it here. I can't tell you enough that ambient occlusion is the secret to really giving things the depth that you need. Okay, and you can don't forget, you do want to put the ambient occlusion even on the sunny side, okay, because that's going to make it pop out, right? It's going to be awkward if you have this thick dark line only around a certain section and not around the whole thing, because it's just not going to pop out quite as much. So it's okay to put ambient occlusion even on the sunny side so it'll pop out. So you see the difference here? By throwing in that ambient occlusion already, you see a layering effect. It really pops out. And that's really the way to make your height, is using that ambient occlusion. Okay, let's go ahead and save real quick. No one's got any questions. Everyone's mighty quiet. So silent. Everyone's so quiet. I can't hear you. All right, 56. Yeah, probably another 30 minutes, most likely. But we'll do what we can. Hola, it's Moosey. Hey, it's Moosey. Hola. Welcome, welcome. Glad that you're here to watch. Awesome. I love it. Okay, so we've kind of created that platform there. We've created this. Next, how do you get up to that platform up there? Let's go ahead and add in a staircase, of course. So go into that catalog, add in a stair. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, none of these look right. None of these look right. What's going on here? Let's save and refresh the page. Sometimes stamps, all the stamps won't show up in the catalog. If that happens, just, oh no, take notes, Siri, my myth killer. No worries. I'm not forcing you to. How dare you be silent? You dogs! Speak! Speak! No, you're fine. No worries. I understand. If you're busy, right? Okay, let's keep going here. Oopsie, what happened here? Huh. Bizarre. There we go. All right. Yeah, take as many notes as you need, my friends. I'll be uploading this to YouTube right after the stream, so you'll be able to watch it from beginning to end, so you won't miss nothing. Nothing. Okay. Open it up, and we're going to add in some stairs and stuff. Let's go ahead and throw that in here. Go with this. What's this custom stamp doing here? Go away, you. Okay. Now, I probably want to use stairs that are a little bit more matching to that stonework there. Kind of makes sense. So maybe what I should do is probably just use a regular staircase, not the natural looking one. And just go ahead and scale it down to the proper size, of course. Let's go and look at these stairs. I think about that looks about right. And I'm just going to put a staircase maybe right here. Now it's in the shadow of the mountain, in the shadow, so it's probably best to drop the size down just a bit. Let's turn off that layer shadow. Go with brightness. Bring that down a little bit. There we go. All right, we'll add that there. Okay, so you have a way to get up to there. Yeah, I love the shadow stuff. Shadow stuff is amazing. Path tools, all that. I made a mistake though. Look at my weird, there's strange holes in this mountain. I can see the light. What's up with this weird mountain, man? I can see the light. What's with this shadow? Why is this one weirder than this one? Lots of inconsistencies. But hey, you won't make that mistake at home now, will you? I know you won't. You guys are all good boys and girls. And you all know. You all know. All right. So we've done that part. So let's throw in an airship here. And I think you can just use, I don't know if there is an actual ship in this style. Let's take a look. Let's just take a look. Oh, we do have a big roll ship right here. This works just fine. we're probably going to want to push this up several layers, and we're going to use object shadows. Let's go with object. I don't know. Let me see how far this shadow can go. Oh, that's transform, but that's crazy. This is an extra deluxe limousine ship. It will take you 15-20 minutes to walk from one side of the ship to the other. Yeah, super shit, man. This shit is like bigger than this mountain. Yay! Oopsie. My bad. Okay, so now so the way I'm going to scale this up properly is to use my staircases. So you notice I put this staircase side by side with this staircase, and that way I'm using it as a reference on the size, right? So look for something recognizable. So this ship is about the right size. This will work just fine. So we'll go with, where is my ship? Where'd you go? There you are, royal ship, perfect. Okay, let's put it, let's put it right here for right now. Let's go grab a dock. Real quick, we want to create a place where they're going to go. So let's create a dock. No dock. Let's look up wood or dwood. Hello, did you find the dwood? The dwood? Yes, there's lots of dwood in here. Lots and lots of dwood. Okay, let's use the staircase as our guide. So let's say about that much boardwalk is going to do just fine. Let's put this right up against here like that. Let's go with an object shadow instead of a layer shadow. Let's boost that up, add it super dark, and then this way it can kind of look like there's some depth underneath it. There we go. And I can go and take this ship and just put it right up against here like this. And we also want to make the shadow for that. So this is an object shadow. We're probably going to want to put some shadow around this so that way it pops out. Now it's not the shadow itself, it's just the ambient occlusion. We're going to do something different with the shadow. We've already assigned where our light source is, which I'm going to go ahead and just go this way a little bit there to kind of fix my mistake. And then we're going to take that same ship, copy, paste. I'm going to go ahead and drop the brightness, change the blur, and change the opacity, and drop the size down, or drop the, now I can go ahead and take that shadow and put it where I want to put it to represent the shadow of the ship. Okay, so there's different ways you can go about doing it. I'm gonna look at that light source real quick. It's probably gonna be somewhere around like about there. You can change it to what you want, but it's one way to show the shadow of something without having to actually change the object shadow. So you can use stamps as shadows. All you have to do is just drop the brightness to 0, change the opacity. You want it to be around the same opacity as this one. So if I were to bring the opacity down like this is, make sure it gets about lost in there. That's about right. Let me take a look. That's about right. So I can go ahead and bring that down. And if it's not visible enough, just bring up the shadow if you want, of course, up to you. And just go ahead and place that where you want. And now you have a shadow for that. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we got going on here. Yeah, stamps can work as shadows. Let me tell you, stamps work great. There's all kinds of fun tricks. In fact, we'll go ahead and show you a couple more stamp shadow options. So let's go with tree. I'll show you a little bit more. 20 minutes, about 20 something minutes, and then we'll take off. So here's this conifer tree right here. Let's say that I want to maybe put a couple trees along this ridge right here. So we'll put one there. Oopsie, I do believe the blur is on, so I should turn that off. Bye, blur. We don't want you on, you naughty thing. Naughty, naughty blur. Why you do? Why you do? Naughty, naughty. Mean, mean thing. Okay, let's throw this in here, throw that one there, and let's throw one there. So you have, let's say you have some trees. Okay, now you can go into, let's say that you want to show elongated trees. Well, clearly the object shadow option is not going to work for you. If you use the path tool, you'll have to draw it out, and that might not work well for you. But you can go to, let's say, Fantasy Regional HD, and we'll type in pine tree, and we'll use that tree as this. So I'll go ahead and increase the size, push it down a layer. Now you'll notice that there's a baked in shadow already right there. Dropping the opacity will kind of make that more opaque. Okay, so first we'll drop that to black. We'll bring it way down. Now some of this shadow right here has been diminished a little bit, so that's kind of helpful. And I'll also put it underneath so the shadow gets hidden. So if you'll notice, the shadow kind of gets hidden away. And now I can go ahead and just copy and paste these, make sure that I have the direction right. So I don't think I have the direction right. There we go. That one. Let's push this one down like this. And let's go bring it down a layer. There we go. And so now you have that one. And let's add in one more. Bring the scale down. Oopsie. Bring the scale down. And push it down one. And then you also have this shadow as well. So you can absolutely use stamp shadows to represent, but just make sure that there is a baked in shadow. You can see it right up here. There's a baked in shadow. I can even see it, okay? But there's cheats. If you put it underneath, some of it gets diminished, some of it gets hidden, and it even kind of works a little bit by putting the shadow underneath that. So you can always use other stamps from other styles to create shadows. If you want to be ingenuitive in that way, you totally can, okay? So very, very helpful to do that, okay? All right, there's a couple more things that I want to add in, and I kind of really showcase these in every single stream, but it's always nice to share each trick every time as much as possible, okay? So one thing I really like to use whenever you're creating a rocky environment, whether it's gray granite stone, whether it's red clay, hardish red clay, whether it's maybe a darkish brown, whatever it is, it's always nice to use this cracked ground to represent a little bit more erosion in your ground, to create more transition along your cliffs. I use this all the time. Now, of course, you're going to have to drop the size down. If you look at 100%, these cracks are absolutely massive. That will not do. That's a no-no, naughty. So bring that size down quite a bit so that a lot of the artifacts are, so you can see much more of the line work. I'll bring it down to 20. I can see it quite well. Don't worry about whether you use an edgy brush for this or not. It's not important. I'll bring down the size, and sometimes it's nice just to take this cracked ground texture and just put it right. Oops, I'm set to BG. That would probably explain that. You can take this cracked ground and just put it along the edge here, and you'll notice that, see, the line work from these cliffs, they don't extend inward towards the cliff of the rock, right? The rock area. But that this kind of broken, cracked ground alpha works perfectly to create a transition between the line work of the cliffs and the actual flat part that your players are going to be playing on. So if I go ahead and put down this right here like that, that cracked ground just works wonders. Okay, now you don't need to put that on the grassy part. I just like to put that on the rocky part. Okay, so you notice that I put it right here on this rocky part. You can even put it at the base on the other side if you want, because it is kind of rocky, as you would kind of expect to have some cliff, some erosion. So adding in that cracked ground is great for transition. It's great for showing erosion. Erosion's caused by time and the elements, rain, wind, snow, storms, all that stuff chips away, turning the rock into sediment, into small little granulations over long periods of time. So you can show erosion by adding in those, that cracked ground. Okay, so very, very helpful. I'll go ahead and save. Where are we at? We still have like 20 minutes. So let's make sure that we throw in the rest. So we've done pretty much the foreground. This entire mountain space is pretty much where players are going to be running around the whole time. And so we'll now want to create the background part. So this whole space right here is basically going to be we'll just say that it's sea level, okay? So what I'll do now is throw in, take these same trees, and we can just make some blanketed forests. So I'll bring the size down quite a bit. So now we have a nice size way down. Let's use a different tree as well. Let's maybe use fantasy watercolor battle maps. Let's go with this tree right here. This tree works just fine. Remember, I'm bringing the scale down, okay? Because this is much further down than this part right here, okay? So what I'll do is increase the density, increase the area size. Let's increase the density up all the way. There we go, quite a bit. And we're just going to create some blanket forests just to kind of represent here. So we'll go this. So you have this nice large forests here. That's kind of nice. There you go. You have a nice forest there. Let's go do that same technique I showed you earlier, right? Let's go ahead and have no shadow, increase the size to go up, and then add a, we'll go with lighten. Okay, and I'll go ahead and just apply these. Oopsie, did it work? I'm not so sure if it worked or not. Did it work? There we go. And just in the center, in the interior, I'm just going to do this technique, okay? And it's going to kind of just show that these highest part of the trees are going to, of course, going to have more light on them. So it's always nice to show that. And then just do some individual ones here to kind of break up the strange line work here. There we go. Okay. So now you have like a forest right here. And this is a great forest technique. Again, just it's nice to have a little bit of contrast, to have the lighter, the top of these, this forest area. It's going to have the most light to it. And of course, make sure that you also just throw in a couple randos, because it just looks really weird when you have a bunch of, when you have a weird tree line like this. It's nice just to throw in a couple randos along your tree line as kind of a way of creating some transition between the forest to what's called the tree line. This is called your tree line right here. I'll show it to you. This right here is called your tree line right here. Sorry, I'm putting out terms that people might not know, so I'll go ahead and be sure to show it to you. So your tree line is basically going to be, oopsie, shoot, didn't do that right, my bad. One moment. Love it when I make mistakes. It's on showcase here. This is basically your tree line right here. What the heck fudge muffins is going on here? All right, so this is your tree line right here. You notice where the trees stop. You don't want this perfect line like that. You don't want that perfect line because it just looks kind of weird. So putting rando trees along the edge of the tree line allows the forest to have a little bit more character and transition, because that tree line can be really overwhelming and it may not look right, okay? So throwing in some of that. So you have this nice thick forest right here. And of course, you can also take this tree right here. You can select every single one of them. Let's go with tree foliage instead of the pine tree. Let's select every single one of those. And you can, of course, select them all and hit blur if you want to show that it's a little bit further down. So one moment, I think if it will let me select blur, I'm not so sure. Oops, I think I'm frozen. It's because I've selected so much that it's kind of freezing up a little bit. But same concept. If you're trying to show a huge gap in height, oopsie, whoa, oh snap. Well, that didn't go well. Hey, it's also really hot in this room, so I think my computer's getting really, really overheated. My bad. Oopsie. Oh, dang it. Well, that's a lot of work that I just lost. We'll shoot. Well, between the OBS running streaming software, between the heat and being in 3K, boom, boom. Yeah, so yeah. Oopsie. So when you throw down your forest, like I showed you earlier, you can, if you want to show an extreme height difference, then just blur the stamps on the ground level, okay? So these stamps are kind of large, right? But if you create those smaller ones down here, you create a forest or whatever, you can just go ahead and select them and show that there is a little bit of atmospheric distortion. So you can just set this to blur, and that way your whole background right here is set to blur, or so that every stamp that's on this part is blurred. Or you can just use the blur filter, but just know that the blur will affect the entire FG and BG. So I'll show you a real quick trick on how to resolve that issue. So if I have these trees right here like this, but I also want to show this entire area covering in a blur, this entire area, this dark green area, I want it to be a blur. I can go to filters, we'll add a new filter, and if I go to blur like this, I'm going to go put it at the smallest layer. Okay, now you notice that the stamps may not be blurred, but the texture here is. Now you can fix that problem by adding clipping masks, and I'll show you that trick. Okay, so we're going to go in to clipping masks, but clip. Let's go ahead and use these hard ones. I'm going to push them down to layer -4 because the blur is on 5. So if I place that stamp, you'll notice that you can see it's not blurred anymore. So I'm going to place these stamps, and I'm going to fill in the area of the mountain with these stamps so that I can no longer blur my mountain, because I don't want that. I just want the blur to be on the background. So throwing in these clipping masks like this can putting them on top of. So remember, the blur is on layer -5, while these clipping masks are on layer -4. So this will allow you to only have certain parts of the map have a blur, while other parts don't. Okay, very, very helpful. I'm just going to place as many as I need until I can see all my proper highlights and the texturing that I put down. So let's go ahead and put one there. Wherever there's blur, I'm going to try to get rid of that by throwing down these clipping masks. So you'll notice now right away that everything on this layer right here, and of course if you have anything on the background layer, drop it to layer -5 and it will blur. So if I throw down let's say a smaller hill right here on layer -5, it's going to be blurred. Okay, so you can create a clear, significant difference between sea level, we'll call it sea level, and your higher peaks. You can use that blur, just like we used the blur in the previous guide. You put the blur in the far background. With top down, it's whatever's furthest down, farthest away from your eye. You can go ahead and use that blur filter and the clipping masks, right? So whatever I put down on layer -5, it's going to be blurred, and that's great if you want to show that height difference. So if I wanted to, I could, I'll show you one other thing too. If you're trying to show a height difference, you can, because the watercolor styles are both in a similar style, it's just in size, you can show the most depth by using watercolor cities as your background because they're the right size, right? So I can throw down a whole bunch of these stamps like this, and I'll make sure to change the blur as well. So I can throw down a whole bunch of these different stamps. Let's choose a different one. Let's go with one that will give me some random stuff. So if you wanted to have a city in the background somewhere, you can just throw a whole bunch of stamps like this. I'm not going to organize them properly, by the way, just to show you. So you want to show some city there. Let's go to this and change our blur, of course. It's a little too blurred, so we'll bring it down. There we go. Now we can bring the blur down. So if you want to, you can show a city further down if you want by just using watercolor city stamps for your BG because that's furthest away from your eye, and you can use the watercolor battle maps for your FG, which is this hill right here, okay? So lots of cool tricks. You can use these two similar, they're both watercolor, so the line work is going to be similar. The only thing difference is the scale, right? Watercolor cities is a smaller scale. So what other perfect stamps to use than to show your maybe a small village or a grand city that rings around this mountain if you wanted to. You don't have to scale down anything from watercolor battle maps. You just have to use watercolor cities. So some nice tips and tricks to help you out when you want to show that scale, that size difference in distance, right? Again, that blur or atmospheric distortion will help to focus on the FG or this mountain. That's where your players are going to be playing. And of course, they'll have maybe a massive city at the base, so they have a nice backdrop to look at, like maybe this is the starting city or village, and they went up the mountain to do a quest. Maybe there's a forested area that that was the first map that they went through, and then they climbed up the mountain to get to this meditation area. So think about what you want to put. And I'm not going to do a full-on city or background because we're running out of time, but I hope that I showed you that what you can do when you want to make a difference. So a lot of this is all really weird, I know, but of course, if you are going to make a giant city or whatever, you're going to want to place everything properly, create your roads, all that stuff. I'll maybe just put a little bit of road in here. Make sure it's set to layer -5, of course. Bring the opacity. I love to use the path tool for roads. They work just fine. So I'll just put some roads in here for fun. So if you want to have that, you totally can. Sorry, not a very good city, but you get the general idea. Okay, so you can show a little bit of a city or a village at the base. You can go ahead and take those trees and just make a ton of them to make a forest area like we did before. Maybe you want a forest over here like this. You're going to put that forest there like this, and then you have like a little forest area. Say you want to have maybe a lake or something, you can totally throw in a lake. So we can just go in with our textures and pick a bluish texture. Remember, everything's going to be blurred. Still here? Hell yeah! The Lord Marshal is here. All bow before him in his awesome power. All right, so we'll go ahead and throw down. Let's go ahead and throw a color in here. And if I want, I can just go ahead and paint in like a lake on the wrong layer, of course, which I'm prone to do here. So if you want, you can throw in like a lake. Now just remember, everything's going to be blurred on that layer when you do that. So just kind of remember that when you're doing it, okay? Now if you don't want your lake to be blurry at the base, then don't do that blur filter, okay? The blur filter, again, it's doing two things. One, it's blurring out the BG and putting emphasis on the FG, which I'm calling the FG. So the BG is the ground level. What I'm calling as FG is basically the mountaintop, okay? The mountain. That's the FG layer, right? Well, the BG is going to be your sea level or ground level, whatever it is you want to call it, okay? And it also helps to create atmospheric distortion. Now, it might work better for maybe an airship map. It might not work so well for this kind of style because really these houses would be, way smaller than this, of course, way smaller because we're trying to show height because look at the size of those trees. But just know that if it's going to be super high up, like if you have your airship super large, like because you're doing it like a battle map, then of course it might make more sense to add in your blur filter because it's so high up, right? We can put another one right here just for fun to show even more height right there. Another one, there we go. Nice. Okay. And then let's talk about filters a little bit. One thing, if you're going to have like something happening up in the sky like this, an airship battle or on top of a mountain, it's probably best to throw in probably some clouds, as you would expect. Now, there might be some filters that work well for that. So why don't I push this in and try to find some clouds? Yeah, the blur filter is fantastic. But again, it affects it affects both the FG and the BG layer because they're on a separate layer. And so you can make that to where the stamps aren't affected by the blur, but your texture layers will. So of course, you're going to have to throw down a clipping mask to make sure that that texture pops out, right? That's just the way it goes. Let's throw in maybe this kind of right here if you want, or you can just throw in clouds. If you feel like this is a little too misty, this doesn't look right, you can go in and just type in cloud, and you can do it by hand if you prefer that. So we can type in cloud like this, and what's really nice is to put some clouds underneath the ship as well as on top of the ship. So let me put one below the ship like this. So I'll put a couple below the ship, and this is how you show height, because there's different layers, right? There's different layers. There's different parts of the atmosphere. I forgot the name of the part of the atmosphere that's closest where most of the weather takes place. I forgot the name of it. I know it's not called the lithosphere because that's under the ground where you have subduction taking place and stuff like that. But I forgot the name of that closest layer of the atmosphere to the Earth. If someone knows the name of that, let me know. And so there's going to expect different layers of clouds, right? You're just going to expect that. Now, if you're going to put a cloud on top of the ship, I recommend that you drop the opacity so that way it doesn't completely blur out your view of the ship. Because if you're having an airship battle, it's probably not going to work well if a bunch of clouds are completely hiding it. I think the stratosphere is above the layer I'm thinking of, but I could be wrong. I'll have to check it out later. But okay, so just remember that if you're going to put a cloud on top of your airship, drop the opacity so that way you can still see the ship, right? It would be really weird if you had this completely full opaque shadow right here, and it's going to completely hide your airship. Like your players are going to look like they're walking on a cloud, right? So of course, drop that opacity down so that people can at least see what they're walking on the ship. And it adds a nice layered effect to it, doesn't it? It kind of has a nice effect. You got these dark clouds, these thick, brighter white clouds underneath that create contrast, that allows the airship to pop out more against the white. And then you also have those a little bit less opaque clouds on top of the airship. So it kind of looks like the ship is kind of enveloped in clouds, okay? Hey, Post-it Not 3, welcome. Glad that you're here. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much how you want to throw in your clouds. And of course, you can throw in thicker clouds wherever you want. Sometimes it's nice to create a little frame of clouds around the edge. So I like to sometimes just take some clouds, put them along my edge here, like this. And of course, you can cover up as much of the BG as you want with clouds. That's perfectly fine because it's a non-playable area. It's not an area in which your players are going to be coming into contact with, right? So it's okay if you have a whole bunch of clouds kind of covering up or having some of it in your BG space. That's perfectly fine. Again, the BG is just your ground level, okay? So if I want, I can just throw in some clouds like this to further represent that we're a little higher up into the cloud space. That kind of helps to create some atmosphere, right? Atmosphere is how you're going to show some depth. So having these clouds being here really gives it a little bit more depth. And of course, there are all kinds of other things that you can do. Maybe you want to throw in a light source to represent where your light is. So you take a round light, maybe put it up in a corner somewhere. You can put it right here to kind of represent that there's a light source coming in this direction, at least, so you have that light source there. Now you know, and we can throw in another one just to get a little bit more brighter in that corner there. There we go, that looks nice. So you have that light source there, and that kind of gives a little bit more depth. Now you know where the light is, and it's projecting those shadows, of course, away. All right, so super easy stuff that really be helpful. And of course, there's all kinds of filters that you can add to make it pop out more. There's like watercolor. There's this watercolor filter that you can add on here. And make sure you put it on layer 5. Just put it on here real quick. See what it looks. Oops, oopsie. I hope my computer doesn't crash. Okay, I'm gonna have to change this, of course. What happened to the map? Where did it go? We'll bring it to repeat. We're gonna want to change the blend mode. I can't remember which blend mode it is. Let me see. I think it was soft light, hard light. I can't recall. Let's also bring that size down. So, whoa, hey, that's kind of fun. Wee, look at that. Wee. What is going on here? So there's like a whole series of different textures that you can add. So you see I've added some watercolor paper texture there to it if you want. I can, let's see here, 1 second, bring the opacity down so it's not so sticks out so much, so I can bring it down, and you see you have this kind of watercolor paper effect that works really well with this style. You can throw down all kinds of stuff. I always recommend throwing down a clarity filter to make the light, make it pop out. Watch what happens when I turn that clarity filter off. You see a huge difference. Poof, the blue, the oranges, the reds, the greens, they pop out. So throwing in a clarity filter is always helpful. I'm just going to throw in one more filter and then we'll go ahead and call it good. If I want, I can throw in a winter or an overcast kind of feel to it to kind of make it look a little bit more blue. I can bring that down a little bit. And so I'm throwing a little bit of blue, looks nice in there. So there are a lot of different options that you can use to make your maps pop out. I always recommend throwing in a clarity filter because it's been shown that the more vibrant the color is on your thumbnail of your map, the more people will probably look at it. That's why you see some people who have more views on their maps. They understand the formula. Vibrant color in a thumbnail makes the map pop out, and it draws the attention of the eye, and so it makes you want to look at it. So for those of you who are private contractors or you're trying to make some money, you want your maps to pop out on your profile, if they're on the explore page, slapping on that clarity filter can really help to make that map pop out. And so that way you can get more views, more clicks, more likes, and more people who are probably going to want to commission you for maps. So again, throw on that clarity filter to get some extra pop, so that way you can get more clients, because we're all trying to put bread on the table, bring home the bacon, and it's kind of hard to do that when you have a lot of competition. So do whatever you can to make your mops. Wow, man, mops. You do everything you can to make your mops pop out, okay? If your mops aren't popping out, then they're just not going to work, okay? All right, well, hey, that concludes the stream. I'll chat with you guys for just a few more moments. If you have questions, anything that you want to ask, let me know. I'll also try to mention what's going on. Yeah, you're mops, man. Dude, check out all these mops, man. I know, stop just moping around here, man. All right, so hey, thank you, everybody. It's been great. I just want to give you a little bit of the schedule here. For those of you who missed it at the beginning of the stream, tomorrow I'm going to be showing you guys how to make map frames. I'm really excited about that. There's several ways to make map frames, from using the mask tool, to using the path tool, to using stamps, to using mask effects. There's all these really cool ways to make frames. And so I will show you how to do that tomorrow, 10 a.m. PST. I also want you to know that next week, it's going to be my birthday, so I'm going to be out of town for the whole week. So no streams next week. I'm so sorry. I feel so bad. So no streams next week. But don't worry. I'll be sure to make sure that I schedule some, whether it's a time lapse or some clips, to be added to YouTube on those days that we normally have streams. So that's that for next week. So the week of the 5th to the 11th, I'll be out. Okay. And then here, I'll go ahead and give you the schedule for the rest of the month, just in case. And of course, you can go to my profile if you're looking for the calendar, and you can clone and edit and make it your own. So on Monday the 13th, we're going to continue our points of interest. I'm excited about that. We're only making about 3 or 4 every stream, but I'm very excited about that. Those are really fun to make. And then on the 15th, which is a Wednesday, I'm going to be showing you how to create a good versus evil watercolor battle map. So the Wednesday the 15th. Monday the 20th, how to create your own map style. So for those of you who are private contractors, who are trying to make money, who want to develop their own style and to get more clients, this is going to be the stream for you. So go check that out on the 20th. The 22nd, or Wednesday, we're going to continue making more city blocks, lots of city blocks, because it is super hard to sometimes figure out, well, where do I put my my blacksmith section? Where do I put my my garden spaces and all that stuff? So all those things will be helpful with city blocks. On Thursday the 23rd, I'm going to be showing you how to create guilds and shops. Just the exteriors for now. We'll probably do a part 2, and then we'll do the interior of those shops. But I just want to show you how to put together roofs and how to kind of create, like, how do I make a village top down where I can tell what each building is. Is this a blacksmith shop? Is this a regular shop where I buy goods? Is this an archery range? Is this a stable? I'm going to be showing you how to make those guilds and shops, fantasy battle maps, exterior. And then part 2, we'll do the interiors, okay? So 2 more streams. The 27th, how to create crossroads. And of course, the 29th on Wednesday, I'm going to be showing you how to create starting villages, okay? And that includes how to get your players started, the shops that are going to be needed in the beginning of your campaign, maybe putting in some side quests, community boards, everything that you can imagine with a starting village. We are going to implement that on the 29th, okay? So I'm excited about that. That's going to be a really popular stream, so whoopee! Okay, folks, hey, is there any questions people have before I take off? Take my lunch? Please let me know. Any questions? Don't be shy. Ask whatever questions you got. Don't worry, I'll take a nice long pre-birthday lunch. So please, if you have any questions, let me know. And of course, if you don't have a question, that's okay. Don't forget to check out our Discord and ask any questions you have there. Believe me, our Discord server is amazing. Everyone's awesome. And the people that aren't awesome, well, we boot their ass, of course. Bye-bye. We give them the boot. All right, get out of here. We don't want blue meanies in here. None of that. Have you done a contour topography map? You know, I tried it a couple times and it failed on me, but I do think it'd be cool. Not practical for maybe a D&D campaign, but maybe you want to have a topography map to show your players or whatever. And I can maybe figure out a method to do that. I did try that like a year ago and it didn't turn out well, but the tool has changed so much in the last 12 months, in the last year, that maybe I can come up with a style on how to do that. And I don't know if I'd make that a stream or not, or if I would make it like a time lapse or maybe a visual guide. So probably a visual guide, because I don't know how utility a topography map will be for a lot of people, but that doesn't mean that we can't do it. So I will go ahead and play around with that and see if I can do that. And of course, don't be afraid, Wandano41, to go to our Discord and go to the channel called Stream Requests. And in that channel, go ahead and tell me that you want that. Just say you want whatever style you want it to be in, and then put topography map. And then I'll go ahead and put that on the list, to-do list, okay? It might be a month or 2 before I do that, because I have to come up with a way to do it first, and then I can show it to you. All right, well, awesome. Hey, any other questions before I go? Don't be shy. Don't be shy now. It's a long stream, folks. 2 hours and 40 minutes. Mati, you need Bob Ross style theme music at the start and end of streams. I don't know how to do that, but maybe I'll figure out how to do that. I have no idea. I will research that, okay? The Lord Marshal has spoken. Bring forth the music or suffer the consequences. All right, everybody. Doesn't look like there's any more questions, so it was a great stream. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. I will see you all tomorrow. Same Maddie time, same Maddie channel, okay? And we will go ahead and we will get started with making the map frames, okay? All right. You guys are awesome. I can't wait to see you all again tomorrow. Until then, please stay safe and healthy. And, of course, merry map making. Auf Wiedersehen. Hey, first time chat. Hey, White. Glad that you are here. Woo! I'm headed out, though, White. I am so sorry. You have a quick question real quick, White? You want me to ask you? You have a question? I can help you out. Ooh, yeah, we are at the end. But don't worry. I'm going to upload this to YouTube, so you can watch it there. And you can also you can just replay it here as well. Sorry that you caught in the tail end there. My deepest apologies, but don't worry. You'll be watching from beginning to end. And we have a stream tomorrow, 10 a.m. PST, okay? Check that out, Map Frames. All right, well, I am headed out. White, glad that you're here. Sorry that you missed it. And hopefully I will see you tomorrow. Please, everybody, stay safe and healthy, okay?